Chapter 8:22. The main purpose of this trip was to figure out the origins of the seven thrones and see if merging them into one could form the state of cycle. After that, he could upgrade it into the will of cycle to fight against Chu Chaoyan. Xiao Chen opened the letter and read it carefully. His expression changed continuously. The letter recorded some of the evil king's past experiences and his comprehension of the martial Tao. However, most of it was a kind of despair for the great Tao. As a powerful expert from the ancient era, he stood at the very peak. However, the higher one stood, the more reverence one would feel for this world. The more one understood, the more one would feel insignificant. The evil king used a very certain tone to express that there were definitely stronger existences above sovereign martial emperor. The peak of the martial Tao was not limited to this. However, the evil king could not enter. Some of the people who advanced to that realm also left mysteriously. The letter did record the seven thrones very clearly. It was a cultivation technique that the evil king obtained from the Mirage Immortal Palace called the cycle art. One had to comprehend seven wills: massacre, ruin, destruction, grief, pain, despair, and death. Finally, one had to comprehend the true essence of each and merge them to cultivate the cycle art. The strength of the cycle art far surpassed that of any heaven-ranked cultivation technique. Every time one succeeded in cultivating a will, it would transform into a throne. The evil king left behind seven thrones, which meant that he had successfully comprehended all seven wills. However, he had not merged them, which meant that he had not cultivated the cycle art. According to the letter, the merging of the seven thrones required a tool. Furthermore, this tool was still in the Mirage Immortal Palace. For the sake of finding this tool and becoming an existence that surpassed sovereign martial emperor, the evil king activated a forbidden land in the Mirage Immortal Palace that even he could not clear. The letter ended there. However, Xiao Chen could roughly guess the contents of the letter. It was nothing more than the evil king failing to clear the forbidden land and escaping with his life. Then he suffered an incurable injury and died. Xiao Chen closed the black letter and could not relax his frown. He did not see the glory of a sovereign martial emperor in the words at all. They were all filled with reverence for the great Tao, the pursuit of martial arts, the yearning for the unknown, and an indescribable loneliness. This gave Xiao Chen a deeper understanding of sovereign martial emperors. 10,000 years ago, the Qing emperor had been the strongest sovereign martial emperor since the ancient era. He had been unrivaled in the entire Kunlun realm. His heart was probably even lonelier than the evil king's. Would his reverence for the great path be as heavy as the evil king's? The great path was difficult. Was there really a peak? This was the first time Xiao Chen had such a question. Putting away those temporarily useless feelings, Xiao Chen summarized the information that was useful to him in the letter. The seven thrones could indeed merge. It was not much different from what Xiao Chen had expected. After merging, the seven states would form the state of cycle. This was a supreme concept that surpassed high-level concepts and pointed directly at the great Tao. However, in order to fuse them, one would need a tool. For now, Chen Feng did not know what that tool was. The only clue he had was in the Mirage Immortal Palace. It had been many years since the Mirage Immortal Palace had appeared. Even if it did, given his current level of strength, it would be hard for him to protect himself in the periphery. All the problems returned to the starting point, advancing to martial sage. Without advancing to martial sage, everything else was just empty talk. Xiao Chen hoped that when he returned to the Haotian realm, there would be news from Yin Qiong. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to advance to martial sage within a year. Xiao Chen had only been in the Kunlun realm for a mere 2 years, and his cultivation had already soared from martial monarch to peak half-sage. However, he was still slightly weaker than the geniuses of the other races. Not to mention the others, just the matters of the three holy masters meant that Xiao Chen had spent more than 3 years in the half-sage realm. After tidying up everything, Xiao Chen did not intend to remain in the primal chaos domain. He intended to directly teleport to the central province and return to the Tianwu domain first. Just as Xiao Chen opened the door, urgent footsteps came from the corridor. An ordinary-looking man dressed as a waiter walked over. Might I ask if this is the Haotian sect's young master Xiao Chen? The waiter asked after he approached. Xiao Chen sensed that the other party was indeed an ordinary person, someone who had not even condensed a martial spirit. He replied calmly, "That is me. Did someone ask you to bring a message?" The waiter did not answer directly. The smile on his face did not change as he said, "Indeed, someone asked this lowly one to bring a message. However, would young Master Xiao be able to prove your identity first? This is my Haotian sect identity token. It should be enough." Xiao Chen handed over his identity token. He felt somewhat suspicious. He wondered which major faction he could find so quickly in the primal chaos domain. The waiter checked the identity token and said, "It is indeed young Master Xiao. This is a letter that Miss Ing Qiong asked our organization to bring to you. Please take a look." Xiao Chen felt excited. He received the letter and read it. After a while, he revealed a smile. The flaming sun fruit, the 3 holy masters' grass, and the heaven dragon flower finally made some headway. When Xiao Chen raised his head to take a look, the waiter had already taken his leave. Xiao Chen burned the letter and rushed down the stairs. "Xiao Chen, why are you smiling so happily? What is written in the letter?" Ao Jiao asked out of curiosity from the immortal spirit ring. Without stopping, Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "We are not returning to the Haotian sect. We are going directly to the profound domain to look for Ing Qiong. She has already found the 3 main ingredients for the breaking sage pill." Ao Jiao giggled and said, "That is indeed something to be happy about. Congratulations." Xiao Chen smiled and did not say anything. Just as he was about to go down to the first floor, his expression changed slightly. Suddenly, he pulled back and hid himself in the corridor below. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Xiao Chen smiled gently and said calmly, "I met an old friend. Do you still remember Zhong Zhenghao? He is on the first floor of the Flourishing Heaven Pavilion in Hunluo City, the evil person who took away the broken mulberry sword." Ao Jiao's expression changed. She asked, "What's wrong? Are you afraid that he will seek trouble for you?" Xiao Chen's lips curled up slightly. "Afraid that he will seek trouble for me? Right now, I am the one seeking trouble for him. I have long wanted to touch him in Hunluo City. It is time to take back the remaining piece of the mulberry sword." On the first floor of the inn, Zhong Zhenghao, who exuded a baleful aura, wore sackcloth robes and ate expressionlessly. Based on the expression on his face, he did not seem to be having a good time recently. Compared to Hunluo City, there were many experts in the primal chaos domain. The cruelty of the environment far surpassed that of Hunluo City. The evil cultivators of the mortal race, ghost race, deity race, biting race, and corpse race all gathered here. With Zhong Zhenghao's cultivation as a peak inferior grade martial sage, it would be impossible for him to obtain a status like that of Hunluo City. After leaving the inn, Zhong Zhenghao headed for the outskirts of the city. Along the way, he frowned a few times. However, he did not say anything. He continued walking until he reached a rather desolate area outside the city. "Sir, after following me for so long, isn't it time to reveal your true self?" Zhong Zhenghao released a baleful aura, and a murderous intent filled his eyes. Strands of heavenly sage laws came out of his body and started absorbing the spiritual energy of the world. Zhong Zhenghao said expressionlessly as his aura reached its peak in an instant. A figure flashed in the air. Xiao Chen floated down and landed on the ground. He smiled gently and said, "Sir, you have good eyes. Do you still remember me?" Doubt flashed in Zhong Zhenghao's eyes. He quickly recalled, and the doubt in his eyes vanished. Greed flashed in his eyes as he said, "So, it is you. Are you here to deliver the myriad heaven divine fist to me? I have really troubled you. I ran to the primal chaos domain, yet you still followed me. Sorry, I am here to take your life." Xiao Chen took out the universe flags and formed hand seals. He quickly activated the formations of the 72 universe flags. The flags fluttered and quickly stabbed into the ground. In the blink of an eye, the area within a 5-kilometer radius was isolated by an invisible barrier, ensuring that Zhong Zhenghao could not escape. Zhong Zhenghao's expression did not change at all. He coldly eyed Xiao Chen's actions, and the greed in his eyes intensified. He said, "Universe flags. These things are extinct. Brat, you really have a lot of treasures in your hands. I can use you as a sumptuous snack. I have not gained anything in the primal chaos domain recently." Zhong Zhenghao's figure moved, and an overwhelming baleful aura spread out. He punched, and the black heavenly sage laws behind him formed a demonic figure, making him look incredibly sinister. The accumulations of the older generation martial sages were extremely terrifying. They had more than 100 years of cultivation. Even in terms of cultivation techniques and states, they could not compare to the geniuses of the younger generation. A profound cultivation base and seasoned combat experience could make up for these shortcomings. If Zhong Zhenghao ran into another genius half-sage, he would not be able to escape defeat as a peak inferior grade martial sage. Unfortunately, he ran into Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin did not take a step back when facing this overwhelming punch. He executed myriad heaven divine fist, deities descending, and punched. Bang! The demonic figure behind Zhong Zhenghao crumbled, and he retreated 100 meters. His qi and blood surged, and his expression turned strange. In his fight with the old man with the family name Lu, Xiao Qin already had a clear understanding of the strength of a peak inferior grade martial sage. He could definitely defeat his opponent with deities descending. Not giving his opponent too much time to be shocked, Xiao Qin drew the lunar shadow saber. Instantly, thunder roared, and the immortal will of thunder surged out. After knocking back Zhong Zhenghao with one punch and suppressing his aura, Xiao Qin unleashed the might of his will and completely suppressed his opponent's aura, not giving him a chance to counterattack. Xiao Qin used the lightning tribulation saber technique, attacking move after move. Rumble! Thunder roared endlessly, and the might of Xiao Qin's will pressed down. After 100 moves, Zhong Zhenghao started to look inferior to Xiao Qin's chain of attacks. Xiao Qin did not fear clashing head-on with Zhong Zhenghao's moves. Zhong Zhenghao had his trump cards, but so did Xiao Qin. The 3 moves of the dragon subduing slash completely suppressed his opponent. Zhong Zhenghao's killing moves instantly crumbled. This was especially so for the final move, double dragons playing with pearls. Xiao Qin could not dodge it, and it struck Zhong Zhenghao's body. As for the lightning tribulation saber technique, a saber technique with a might no weaker than a heaven-ranked martial technique, it was executed casually by Xiao Qin. He was very familiar with it. It was like he was executing an ordinary saber technique without pause. After another 100 moves, Zhong Zhenghao felt that his internal injuries could no longer endure, and he wanted to retreat. However, Xiao Qin relied on his rank 2 sage body and looked much better than Zhong Zhenghao. Chapter 8:23. Zhong Zhenghao executed a secret technique and soared into the sky. He wanted to leave the battlefield, to stop fighting with Xiao Qin. Bang! When Zhong Zhenghao reached 1,000 meters away, he ran into a formless barrier and was knocked back down. Horror filled his face. When Xiao Qin saw this scene, he smiled coldly and sheathed his saber. The electricity in the sky gathered together and formed a purple lightning talisman. Xiao Qin pointed, and a purple light flew out. The immortal inscriptions on the talisman spun. Zhong Zhenghao, who had fallen to the ground, had no time to react. The talisman easily broke his weak protective quintessence. With its PUCI sound, a bloody hole appeared in Zhong Zhenghao's chest. He roared in dissatisfaction and walked over to Xiao Qin. In the end, he only took 10 steps before he collapsed. The purple talisman returned to Xiao Qin's sea of consciousness. Then he waved his hand, and the universe flags turned into beams of light and landed in his palm. This was the first time he used the universe flags, and the results were pretty good. Xiao Qin smiled faintly and took out Zhong Zhenghao's universe ring. Xiao Qin found the broken half of the mulberry sword. Xiao Qin could not help but heave a sigh of relief. He had been afraid that Zhong Zhenghao would smelt this broken sword. If that was the case, there would be no point in finding it. Xiao Qin took back the broken half of the mulberry sword for Ao Jiao, nothing else. Ao Jiao revealed herself and played with the broken half of the mulberry sword that Xiao Qin handed to her. She revealed a nostalgic expression in her eyes. Compared to before, that sorrowful expression was nowhere to be seen. The matters of the Thunder King were already in the depths of her mind, becoming memories. She could reminisce about them but not feel sad. One had to look forward. There are many good materials in this broken half of the mulberry sword. Are you really going to give it to me and not smelt it back? The broken half of the sword flew around in Ao Jiao's hand. It was like she had an extra arm. She was very familiar with it. Xiao Chen curled his lips and pretended to be angry. He said, "Strange, am I such a selfish person in your eyes?" Ao Jiao giggled and said, "Stupid master, you still have some self-awareness, huh? I suddenly feel that I have to change my mind. If I reforge it, I might be able to obtain 1 or 2 more materials to upgrade the Lunar Shadow Saber. Dream on. How could I give you something that you gave me back? Besides, it was originally mine." The two of them bickered happily as they quickly left this place, heading toward the city of the Profound Domains in Clan. Naturally, Xiao Chen could not rely on his own strength to fly to the Profound Domain. Given the vast borders of the Kunlun realm, even if it was not a boundless sea, he would not be able to fly to the Profound Domain. At the very least, one would need to be at the level of the blue-robed emperor to be able to rely on their own strength to travel unhindered in all directions. This had to do with the spatial structure of the Kunlun realm. Once the speed reached a critical point, it could not be increased any further. He had to tear through the void. Otherwise, the faster he moved, the greater the resistance and the greater the consumption. No one in the martial sage realm could withstand it. After circling around for a while, Xiao Chen finally returned to the Tianwu Domain's central province. Due to the impending demonic god blood sacrifice, the peak factions of the primal chaos domains started to reshuffle. They were all prepared to take advantage of the chaos to make a fortune. For the sake of the impending chaos, they all expanded their territories and frantically replenished their strength. Several cities with transportation formations fell under strict control. Xiao Chen had to spend some effort to find a way to get a spot. He spent a large sum of money to obtain a transportation formation. There were some stories that happened, and he saw the true dangers of the primal chaos domain. This was a chaotic land where the 5 major races and some ancient races gathered. As an inferior-grade martial sage, Xiao Chen could not be too unbridled. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. This was indeed a paradise for rogue cultivators. There were no scruples, and there were no dignified guardians. Whoever had the bigger fist was the truth. The strong grew stronger, and the weak grew weaker. The survival of the fittest was a cruel daily scene. After seeing the horrifying accumulations of some of the major factions, Xiao Chen felt somewhat worried. If the demonic god blood sacrifice came, the demons would choose to attack the Tianwu domain. There would be the army of the demons in front and the evil cultivators taking advantage of the situation behind. To the Tianwu domain, this would be a huge disaster. However, there was still some time to prepare. According to the information that Xiao Chen obtained, the demonic god blood sacrifice this time would take place at least 10 years later. However, 10 years was not a long time. Based on Xiao Chen's experience, he had already been in this world for 6 years. Based on the age of this world, he was already 23 years old. To Xiao Chen, the events of 6 years ago were still fresh in his mind. As a sovereign noble clan, the Ying clan had been in the Profound Domain for tens of thousands of years. Their faction could be said to be spread throughout the Profound Domain. They were not much stronger than Bushin Palace. However, they were not as strong in terms of peak experts. After Xiao Chen arrived in the Profound Domain, he flew all the way to the Ying clan's headquarters, Qin City. This was a city even more majestic than Haotian City. Based on this, the name of the Sky Dome realm's Great Qin Nation should have something to do with this Qin City. Although this city was the Ying clan's headquarters, it was open to the outside world. The entire city was very prosperous. In terms of commercial development alone, it could leave Haotian City in the dust. After putting on a black cloak and entering the city, Xiao Chen headed straight for the largest inn in the city, the Heavenly Water Restaurant. When Xiao Chen arrived at the inn, he informed the waiter and was immediately led to a private room for distinguished guests. "This guest, please wait for a while. The young miss will be here soon," the waiter said respectfully to Xiao Chen in the private room. After waiting for 3 or 4 months, Xiao Chen was not afraid of waiting any longer. He waved his hand and dismissed the waiter. Since he had nothing to do, he took out the painting of the Qing emperor drawing the saber and looked at it. Xiao Chen was already used to the feeling of being killed. Now, when he faced this painting of the Qing emperor drawing the saber, he could remain as still as a mountain, not panicking at all. He could only deal with the person in the painting in that mysterious space. After about 10 minutes, Xiao Chen heard footsteps. He put away the painting of the Qing emperor drawing the saber and waited quietly. "Young Master Xiao, it has only been 3 or 4 months, yet you have become so cautious. This is not like you." The door opened gently, and Ying Qiong, dressed in phoenix robes, walked in with a smile on his face. Xiao Chen removed his hood and said calmly, "The other 3 sovereign noble clans view me as a thorn in their side. Now that I have come to the profound domain, I have to be more cautious." Ying Qiong sat across from Xiao Chen. His alluring figure exuded a boundless charm. He revealed a meaningful smile and said, "The descendant of the Qing emperor, the first rank of the human proud son of heaven ranking. It would be hard for you not to attract attention." Xiao Chen did not want to linger on this topic, so he went straight to the point. "You breached the contract 2 months later than the agreed time." A mischievous expression appeared on Ying Qiong's pretty face. She smiled craftily and said, "This is not considered breaching the contract. If not for the fact that you wanted to collect 2 sets of ingredients, I would have prepared them for you long ago. According to the unwritten rules, if one breached the contract, they would have to pay a certain price to make it up to the other party." Clearly, Ying Qiong did not want to suffer such a loss. Xiao Chen did not bother arguing with her. He took out the other half of the great rock spreading wings painting and said, "Take it out, then. Refining the breaking sage pill will take some time. I do not have much time to waste." Ying Qiong did not beat around the bush. With a flip of her hand, 3 brocade boxes appeared in front of her, floating quietly. Then she flicked her finger, and the brocade boxes opened. Instantly, a dense medicinal fragrance wafted out. Xiao Chen extended his spiritual sense and easily determined the authenticity of the ingredients. The flaming sun fruit, the 3 holy masters' grass, and the heaven dragon flower were all real. "Good, you did not lie to me. You are indeed capable. You can bring me the 3 main ingredients now," Xiao Chen said indifferently. However, Ying Qiong smiled faintly and did not move. She said, "Bring me the other half of the core painting piece first. After that, I will give you the 3 main ingredients." Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and said, "What's wrong? You don't trust me?" Why would you trust me?" There was indeed no sense of trust between the two of them. This girl had already tricked Xiao Chen once in the Star Grave. Naturally, he would not let it happen again. Although the other half of the core painting piece could not allow Xiao Chen to become a martial sage, it was still very useful. Ying Qiong was worried that Xiao Chen would go back on their agreement after obtaining the other half of the core painting piece. For the sake of secrecy, she did not bring many people with her. Given Xiao Chen's methods, even if he wanted to kill her, he would not be able to keep her here. Xiao Chen entered deep thought. After thinking for a while, he said, "Very well. Since that is the case, how about we push the things in our hands to each other at a constant speed?" Ying Qiong did not have any misgivings about this. She said, "That is exactly what I was thinking." Xiao Chen gently raised his palm and pushed. The core painting piece, giving off a faint light, slowly moved towards the other party. Ying Qiong did the same, slowly pushing the 3 brocade boxes towards the other party. The 2 brocade boxes were less than half a meter away from each other. However, the speed of the 2 items was like that of a snail. After a few minutes, they barely crossed the halfway mark. The treasures of both sides overlapped in the air. Both of them heaved a sigh of relief. As long as they crossed the middle, they would be able to take what they wanted. Bang! Just as the 2 of them focused on each other, a figure suddenly knocked over the door to the booth. The expressions of Xiao Chen and Ying Qiong changed at the same time. They quickly put away their things. The person who knocked over the door was an old woman with a high cultivation. When Xiao Chen checked, he felt that she was at least a medial-grade martial sage. Ying Qiong's expression appeared even more flustered than Xiao Chen's. he helped the old woman up with a sullen expression and asked, "What's going on?" "Young miss, leave quickly. The people outside are all dead." "I cannot last much longer either," the old woman said as she coughed and vomited a mouthful of blood. Clearly, she suffered severe internal injuries. Whoosh! A figure flashed outside the door, and a yellow-robed old man appeared. He smiled coldly and said, "You want to leave? Do you think that is possible?" Ing Cheong's expression changed. He exclaimed, "Third uncle, why is it you?" The person who came was actually Ing Cheong's third uncle, someone who held a high position in the clan and was extremely strong. The old woman struggled to get up and pushed Ing Cheong back. She said, "Leave quickly. Don't bother about me." Ing Cheong struggled in his heart for a while before he roughly understood what was going on. He turned around and leaped towards the booth's window. Chapter 8:24. Along the way, Xiao Chen suddenly thought of Xiao Chen. He glanced at his seat, but it was empty. After the old woman entered, Xiao Chen immediately left silently. Seeing this scene, Ing Cheong could not help but curse in her heart. To think that this lady was still thinking about him. Unexpectedly, this fellow is even faster than a rabbit. Whoosh! Ing Cheong leaped out of the window. This place happened to be behind the Heavenly Water restaurant. It was quiet and secluded. Normally, few people passed by. The moment he landed, Ing Cheong saw Xiao Chen standing in front with a frown. She quickly chased after Xiao Chen and ruthlessly smacked him. "Aren't you very fast? Why aren't you running anymore?" Ing Cheong said in a fit of pique. Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and did not reply. He only looked around. Ing Cheong followed Xiao Chen's gaze and saw a masked man standing on the roofs of a few nearby buildings. They were all dressed in black with a venomous purple scorpion embroidered on their chests. Only their eyes were exposed, and they held weapons in their hands. Their gazes were cold, like they were corpses. Ing Cheong took in a deep breath of cold air. She stared at the poisonous purple scorpion and muttered, "This is my Ing clan's saint-level death-sworn warrior. What a grating fan. You really dared to attack." Xiao Chen's expression was extremely unsightly as well. He quickly thought of a countermeasure. There was a total of 5 black-clad men. Their cultivations were all medial-grade martial sages. If there were only one of them, Xiao Chen would not have any problems escaping. If he worked together with Ing Cheong, they might even be able to defeat one of them. With 5 medial-grade martial sages working together, furthermore, they were death-sworn paid for by the Ing clan. There was no need to think too much. They would not be able to put up a fight. If each of them struck Xiao Chen with a killing move, no matter how strong his physical body was, he would turn into a meat patty. However, he did not feel much fear at all. He had the will clone of the Haotian Great Monarch, and he could summon it out automatically in times of danger. With that, he would be able to crush the 5 of them easily. However, that will clone could only be used once. The Haotian Emperor had expended a lot of energy to create it, so he couldn't give him a second will clone. It was his final life-saving trump card, and he would never use it unless he had no other choice. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth twitched. He smiled gently and said, "Miss Ing, I've really been implicated by you this time. Let's leave it to fate. I won't pursue this matter further." Obviously, this group of people had come to kill Ing Cheong. This was an internal dispute within the Ing family. This kind of thing was not rare. In order to fight for the position of successor, the various factions of the family would sometimes go to extremes. If this happened to a sovereign noble clan with a long inheritance, the benefits involved would be even greater. Such a method made even more sense. If they split up, the pressure on the 2 of them would be much smaller, and their chances of escaping would be much higher. After speaking, electric light flashed under Xiao Chen's feet, and he leaped forward. However, a fragrant wind blew from behind. Before Xiao Chen could dodge, he felt something press down on his back. A pair of arms bent gently and wrapped around Xiao Chen's neck. It was Ing Cheong hugging Xiao Chen from behind. Before Xiao Chen could say anything, he had just used the explosive power of Thunder Dragon Steps to break through the encirclement of the 5. 5 strong attacks carried a berserk wind as they surged towards him. Every one of these attacks was extraordinary. If they landed on his body, he would not feel good. Xiao Chen maintained absolute calm and executed Thunder Dragon steps at full power. Electricity flickered, and he moved 3 kilometers in one step. The 5 black-clad men chased after him unhurriedly. Their figures leaped up and down as they executed all sorts of attacks, coordinating with each other as they attacked Xiao Chen continuously. While fleeing at full speed, Xiao Chen still had to change his position to dodge the attacks from behind. Furthermore, he was carrying a woman on his back. His Thunder Dragon steps descended another kilometer. Xiao Chen could cross only 2 kilometers in one step. The 5 people behind him chased relentlessly, sending out lethal martial techniques. All sorts of resplendent multicolored lights appeared in the air, causing space to fluctuate and form ripples that spread out. The buildings in the city were all turned to ashes by the shock waves. The mastermind seemed to have planned this long ago. Along the way, Xiao Chen did not see a single person. He guessed that this large area had been sealed off. To be able to do this, it had to be the true upper echelon of the Ying clan. The other party was determined to kill Ying Qiong. The people behind chased relentlessly. When Xiao Chen dodged, he was no longer as calm as before. He brushed past them several times. Missing, speaking of which, how long are you going to hug me? If you still don't come down, I will really throw you off. Xiao Chen felt helpless when facing the beauty behind him. He had never seen such a carefree girl before. The other party's voluptuous figure pressed tightly against him. Any man would feel disturbed. Xiao Chen endured it very bitterly. When Ying Qiong heard this, she could not help but hug Xiao Chen even tighter. She said anxiously, "If not for fear of exposing your movements, this lady would not have brought only 2 guards out. You have to take responsibility for anything you say." Naturally, Xiao Chen did not believe the other party's words. After dodging another attack, Xiao Chen said with a cold expression, "Come down. If you still don't come down, I will not be polite to you anymore." Ying Qiong smiled faintly and moved her body gently behind Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen could clearly feel 2 voluptuous breasts rubbing against his back. In a moment of carelessness, Xiao Chen nearly lost control of his quintessence, causing him to fall from the sky. Young Master Xiao, let's see how you are going to be rude to me." Ying Qiong tilted her head slightly and blew a breath of hot air on Xiao Chen's face. She said, "It does not matter whether you believe me or not. In any case, today's matter is because of you. If not for protecting your secret, I would not have brought only 2 guards. No matter what you say, you have to take responsibility. Don't leave me behind." Xiao Chen took a deep breath and slowly descended from the sky. He floated steadily and landed on the ground. He said calmly, "Come down then. I'm afraid of you. I will ensure your safety today." Ying Qiong shook her head like a rattle drum. She said, "Not coming down, not coming down. The moment I come down, you will leave me behind. How can I be a match for 5 medial-grade martial sages?" Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. He grabbed Ying Qiong's wrists with both hands and slowly pried them open. He said softly, "Come down. Since I promised, I will definitely ensure your safety." For some reason, Xiao Chen said these words. Perhaps it was because of his sincerity, or perhaps it was because of Xiao Chen's character. His words sounded very convincing. Xiao Chen gently pried Ying Qiong's hands open. Then he put them down and said, "Stand behind me. Don't do anything." After that, Xiao Chen turned around and looked coldly at the 5 people flying over. He patted his chest with his right hand, and the void projection painting appeared in his palm. Ying Qiong was slightly stunned, somewhat horrified. Why did Xiao Chen stop and face 5 medial-grade martial sages head-on? Was this any different from suicide? "Don't move. Just stand there." Just as Ying Qiong was about to step forward and stop Xiao Chen's indifferent voice rang out. A surging, icy sword chi tore through the air and flew out. Everywhere it passed, ice and snow fell. The air seemed to freeze, so cold that it made one shiver. Before the sword chi arrived, a cold wind arrived. As the wind howled, a chill spread from Xiao Chen's feet to his chest, making his limbs cold and immobilizing him. The heavenly sage laws in Xiao Chen's body surged like a purple river of electricity, flowing through his entire body and eliminating this chill. Xiao Chen flipped his hand, and the void projection painting unfurled. A red light flashed, and the scarlet lotus flame in his palm leaped out of the painting and clashed with that icy sword qi. The scarlet blood frost flame was rumored to be one of the evilest flames in the world. Although this was not a replica, it contained its true essence. However, its might was significantly reduced. When the scarlet lotus flame crashed into the surging icy sword qi, it immediately stuck to it. The scarlet lotus flame turned into a scarlet membrane that covered the entire surface of the icy sword qi. The frost flame quickly permeated into the icy sword qi and assimilated it in the blink of an eye, turning it into scarlet specks floating in the air. Then, they quickly reformed into a scarlet lotus flower. Ignoring the shocked black-clad man, Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and pointed. The scarlet blood frost flame turned into a flame spirit that tangled with the other party. According to Xiao Chen's estimation, given the scarlet blood frost flame's current level, the flame spirit that it formed should be as strong as a half-sage. However, it would not have any weaknesses. Without the suppression of the pure yang flame, even a medial-grade martial sage would have to put in a lot of effort to kill this flame spirit. This flame spirit could help Xiao Chen by some time. Xiao Chen did not have time to think. Two beams of light shot out from his eyes and formed a Taiji yin-yang flame diagram above his head. They chased each other, materializing the 4 divisions and the 8 trigrams. Bang! 2 strong attacks struck this Taiji yin-yang flame diagram from above and gave off a dazzling golden light. A loud sound rang out. Xiao Chen felt like the mental energy in his sea of consciousness was like a dam opening, leaking out wildly. However, Xiao Chen managed to block these 2 attacks. Furthermore, they were reflected back at the 2 at an even more horrifying speed. The killing moves that the 2 executed were so fast. Furthermore, they did not expect their martial techniques to be reflected back. Hence, they were struck by their own martial techniques and knocked back more than 4,000 meters. Xiao Chen did not stop moving. His expression did not change at all. The Taiji yin-yang flame diagram spun again, and an arm stretched out from it. In an instant, it expanded rapidly. The emperor's might of a peerless sovereign came out from his arm as he lightly clapped his hand. Then, the palm gently smashed down and knocked back one of the black-clad men, causing him to vomit blood. After this strike, the arm quickly retracted back into the diagram. Xiao Chen's mental energy was also completely drained. The light from the Taiji yin-yang flame diagram above his head vanished and returned to his eyes. One left. In a few breaths, Xiao Chen knocked back 4 people. This scene stunned Ing Qiong, who was watching from behind. However, the last person of the other party had already succeeded in pressing forward. Given the other party's strength, they would not be able to kill Xiao Chen quickly in close combat. Delaying Xiao Chen would not be a problem. However, once the others recovered, only death awaited them. Thinking of this, Ing Qiong could not help but pale slightly. A wooden umbrella appeared in his hand as he prepared to fly forward. Battle Sage's Strength Character Formula, 36-fold Combat Prowess. Chapter 825. When Xiao Chen saw the final person approaching him, his expression remained as calm as still water. He did not panic at all as he put away the void projection painting and summoned out the lunar shadow saber. Xiao Chen used the strength character formula to drive Soaring Dragon. A vast aura spread out boundlessly from his body. A dragon roar resounded, and a strong wind blew. The surging aura was like a snowy mountain collapsing, inspiring fear. The black-clad masked man actually paused for a moment in midair. Hidden dragon in the depths, soaring dragon in the sky. It is fine if it does not move, but when it does, it soars into the clouds and looks down on the mountains and rivers. Xiao Chen gently took a step forward, and a boundless energy burst forth. In that instant, a 1,000-meter-long crack appeared in the ground, splitting the flat ground in half. When Xiao Chen drew his saber, it gave off a resplendent and dazzling light. He soared up like a blue dragon. With 36-fold combat prowess, the roar of this blue dragon could shatter a martial sage's courage. Xiao Chen's momentum was even more unblockable. A horrifying wound appeared on the masked man's chest, and he vomited a large mouthful of blood. His fate was unknown as he flew back 10 kilometers. Although all this took a long time to describe, Xiao Chen had indeed blocked the attacks of the 5 medial-grade martial sages in an instant. He only needed to raise his hand a few times to block these insufferably arrogant 5 people. Xiao Chen forcefully suppressed the aftereffects of using the strength character formula and took out the puppet snake. Then he picked up the somewhat stunned Ying Qiong and quickly entered the puppet snake. After blocking for a while, there should be enough time for the puppet snake to move. Xiao Chen had beaten back 5 medial-grade martial sages with a wave of his hand as a half-sage. If he told others about this, no one would believe him. However, it had happened right now. The 5 masked black-clad men recovered slightly. Then, they gathered together with furious expressions. Between them was a hole as wide as a water bucket. It was pitch black and bottomless. They exchanged glances and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. With their abilities, they could split mountains and split rocks. They could even overturn rivers and seas in a small area. However, drilling into the ground with the agility of animals was a little too much for them. Of course, cultivators who practiced special cultivation techniques did not exist. There would always be some extraordinary people in the world. However, it was clear that these 5 were not such people. Puppet Snake, this guy actually possesses such an almost extinct artifact. This is going to be difficult. With great difficulty, I managed to drag some of the elders of the clan over, but that girl still managed to escape. The 5 of them were a little flustered. If they allowed Ying Qiong to leave this time, once the matter in the depths of the starry sky was settled, all the elders would return. What awaited them then would not be a good outcome. A gust of wind was heard. The expert who had killed the old lady who served Ying Qiong came to the entrance of the cave. After listening to what had happened, his face slowly turned gloomy. The old man said angrily, "What a descendant of the Qing emperor! How dare you ruin my plan like this? Third elder, what should we do? Now that we cannot kill the second young miss, what should we do?" The yellow-robed old man said calmly, "I will think of a way to suppress this matter. Since I made a move, naturally, I am prepared for failure. You all can return first." When the 5 black-robed men saw that the old man was so calm, not flustered at all, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. After respectfully receiving their orders, they turned around and prepared to leave. Pusia! An extremely fast saber light flashed, and 5 heads flew into the air. Their eyes filled with disbelief. Unexpectedly, the yellow-robed old man's plan was to silence them by killing them. Even more unexpectedly, this yellow-robed old man was a grandmaster-level martial sage. If they had known, they would have kept an eye out and not casually shown their backs to this person. A figure descended. It was the handsome man who had stood beside Ying Qiong during the Sage War. He frowned slightly and looked at the cave under his feet. He said, "Second sister, you are really lucky. You paid such a huge price to lay this trap. Unexpectedly, an unexpected person broke it so easily." The yellow-robed old man sighed softly and said, "First, young master, I will deal with the aftermath. I will not implicate you in this matter." The young man entered deep thought. After a while, he stretched out his right hand, and a small bird appeared in his palm. He raised his hand and let go, and the small bird flew into the cave. That white-robed bladesman should not have any combat prowess for the time being. If my wind-chasing bird can find them, we should still have a chance. The yellow-robed old man's eyes lit up. He said, "In that case, I will go and make preparations now." The young man raised his hand and said, "There's no need. Just focus on dealing with the aftermath. I will deal with the rest. If we make a mistake, we will lose our luck. If we do our best, we will be going against the heavens. I will just send some people over." Outside Qin City, in a forest 1,500 kilometers away, the calm soil suddenly exploded, and a black snake leaped out. The mechanism under the snake's belly opened, and 2 figures jumped out. Tiny scarlet lines covered Xiao Chen's entire body, appearing and disappearing as if his skin would burst. Xiao Chen did his best to suppress the aftereffects of using the strength character formula and put the puppet snake into the universe ring. Then, he put on his hood again and stared at the cave with a grave expression. Before Ing Qiong's somewhat doubtful gaze, Xiao Chen suddenly made a move after a while. A sharp saber chi shot out from his fingertip. Kasi, the wind-chasing bird, which was less than half the size of a palm, was chopped in half by this purple saber chi the moment it emerged. This is the wind-chasing bird that my big brother, Ing Fan, raised. It really is him. Ing Qiong said with a somewhat gloomy expression. If he had only guessed earlier, now that he saw this unique wind-chasing bird, there was no need for any evidence to prove anything. After waiting for a while and seeing that no wind-chasing bird came out, Xiao Chen relaxed. The skin on his face, which was hidden under his hood, slowly split open and blood flowed out. Miss Ing, you are already safe. Can we continue with our agreement? Pain spread through Xiao Chen like needles pricking him. He felt the aftereffects that he had been suppressing were like a flood or a ferocious beast, ready to erupt at any moment. Xiao Chen's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Ing Qiong felt this was strange. However, he did not hesitate this time and handed the 3 brocade boxes to Xiao Chen. When he saw Xiao Chen's right hand stretch out from his sleeve, he was stunned. Your hand. Xiao Chen's originally smooth skin split open, and blood leaked out. It looked incredibly horrifying. Ing Qiong stretched out his hand and blew out a strong wind. Xiao Chen's hood immediately fell off, and Ing Qiong let out a startled cry. He could not help covering his mouth with his hands, and goosebumps broke out all over his body. Now, Xiao Chen looked very frightening. His face was covered in spiderweb-like lines of blood. That was the blood that leaked out when his skin split open. Xiao Chen put away the brocade boxes and covered himself with his hood again. Then, he tossed the other half of the core painting piece to Ing Qiong. He smiled bitterly and said, "Sorry, I scared you. It's just a superficial wound. I will be fine after some rest." Compared to when he executed the strength character formula in the past, the situation this time was much better. He still remembered the first time he executed the strength character formula in the Sky Dome realm. He had instantly overdrawn all his combat prowess. He could not even stand up. Being able to last for so long this time already far surpassed Xiao Chen's expectations. At this rate, he should be able to execute the strength character formula once after he attained a rank 4 body. A light flashed on his forehead, and a scarlet throne appeared on a scarlet cloud. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and endured the intense pain. Then he leaped up and finally sat on the throne. A scarlet light flickered, and the massacre throne carried Xiao Chen into the distance. A pretty figure holding a wooden umbrella descended from the sky and stood on the speeding scarlet cloud. Xiao Chen glanced at her. For some reason, Ing Qiong followed him again. However, even moving his lips now caused intense pain. Xiao Chen could not be bothered to say anything, so he let her follow him. In any case, if the other party wanted to take advantage of this to take his life, the Haotian Emperor's will clone would turn the other party into dust the moment Xiao Chen truly felt threatened. As the rainbow light flew, the scarlet cloud carried the throne. After flying for 50 kilometers, Xiao Chen landed it at the foot of a stone mountain. That place was filled with all sorts of strange rocks and very few people. It was a very suitable place for recuperating and hiding from pursuers. After landing, Xiao Chen put away the scarlet throne. Then he spent some time using the universe banners to lay a restriction around this place. Without saying a word, Xiao Chen leaped onto a stone pillar and sat down cross-legged. Then, he started to deal with the repercussions of using the strength character formula without any worries. As Ing Qiong looked at Xiao Chen on the stone pillar, her expression became uncertain, complicated. She did not know how to describe her current emotions. She found Xiao Chen increasingly unfathomable. She could not understand or guess what kind of person he was. He was clearly selfish to the point of being cold. However, in order to make a promise, Xiao Chen risked such severe injuries to ensure her safety. It was just like when Xiao Chen clashed head-on with Yen Shisan in the Star Grave Palace for the sake of the spirit fox race woman. At this moment, Ing Qiong did not know that the most wondrous emotion in the world of mortals was like a soft hook, slowly entering the defenses of her heart. She could no longer pull it out. 3 days. For 3 days, Xiao Chen endured immense pain. by relying on his strong physical body, he mostly recovered from the repercussions of using the strength character formula. The scary red mark on Xiao Chen's face also disappeared. His skin became as smooth as before. A bright light flickered in his eyes, and he gained a deeper understanding of the strength character formula. Xiao Chen stood up and spat out a mouthful of turbid qi. Then, he put away his cloak and stretched his limbs. The slight noise immediately startled Ying Qiong, who was seated on the stone pillar closest to him. She sat there with her eyes closed, feeling somewhat restless. When Ying Qiong opened his eyes and saw that Xiao Chen had recovered his original appearance, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Joy flashed in his eyes. "Young Master Xiao, many thanks for saving me this time," Ying Qiong said with a smile. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and sized up this girl. Then, he revealed a contemplative expression. After a while, he said something that nearly made Ying Qiong vomit blood. "I really could not tell that Miss Ying is not only intelligent and strong, but she is also very broad-minded. This Xiao is truly ashamed of my inferiority." Chapter 8:26. These words matched Xiao Chen's gaze. As long as Ying Qiong was not a fool, she would know what Xiao Chen was hinting at. 2 patches of red immediately appeared on Ying Qiong's jade-like, smooth cheeks, looking incredibly bashful. Ying Qiong felt both angry and anxious. Her usual calm and indifferent attitude was nowhere to be found. What a great Xiao Chen! This miss did not merge the 2 painting pieces back into one and guarded them for 3 days. The moment you open your mouth, you are like a venomous snake. However, Ying Qiong could not think of any words to rebut. She could not admit that she was guarding the painting piece to Xiao Chen's face. Ying Qiong stomped her foot and said angrily, "Too despicable. Xiao Chen, this miss misjudged you. You are just a selfish, vile person with an even more venomous mouth." Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said unconcernedly, "Many thanks for the praise. To be able to receive such praise from the magnanimous Miss Ying, this Xiao feels ashamed of his inferiority." Xiao Chen purposely emphasized the words, magnanimous. Ying Qiong's face turned completely red. She could no longer remain here. She glared at Xiao Chen and ran far away, gritting her teeth in hatred. Ao Jiao, who was in the immortal spirit ring, laughed so hard that she could not close her mouth. She said, "Xiao Chen, when did you become such a venomous snake? You even bully a weak girl like that." "Weak girl?" Xiao Chen was flabbergasted. "Do you think that a girl who can find my weakness perfectly, making me make a promise and end up in such a sorry state, is a weak girl? Since I made my debut, aside from Chu Chaoyan once or twice, she is the only one who can scheme against me." Ao Jiao thought about it carefully and realized that this was indeed the case. Xiao Chen had always been cautious and meticulous. Even when he was in all sorts of dangerous situations, he would always calculate the consequences. Along the way, although every step he took was filled with danger, the number of times he was schemed against could be counted on one hand. Jumping down from the stone pillar, Xiao Chen looked around and said, "Let's not talk about her anymore. I'm going to start preparing to concoct pills. I'm basically satisfied with this trip. I've finally collected all the ingredients for the breakthrough sage pill." Xiao Chen did not tell Ao Jiao everything about immortal Dao alchemy and the secrets of the compendium of cultivation. He only said that he obtained an ancient book when he was young. Ao Jiao also knew that everyone had their own secrets. After hearing Xiao Chen's explanation a long time ago, she didn't ask much. With a wave of his hand, Xiao Chen sent out a few streams of energy, forming a circle around the surrounding stones. Then he used his saber qi to carve out a simple stone table and laid out the materials one by one. With a flip of his hand, the blue dragon medicine cauldron appeared. Xiao Chen placed it on the stone table and looked at the blue dragon medicine cauldron. The image of an old friend immediately appeared in his mind. He wondered how Feng Feishue was doing after they parted that day. There were too many unresolved matters of the past. Perhaps it was time to return to the Sky Dome realm, the place where the story began. These thoughts flashed in Xiao Chen's mind. He did not rush to refine the breakthrough sage pill. Instead, he took out another set of ingredients, intending to refine some ordinary medicinal pills to get a feel for it. On the other side, at the foot of the stone mountain, Cheong also cast aside all distracting thoughts and focused on merging the two painting pieces. The two of them were both working hard to advance to martial sage. Their desire to advance to martial sage was no weaker than the other. After the morning glow scattered, it gathered again. The setting sun turned bright red. The days at the foot of the stone mountain passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Before the stone table, Xiaochen revealed an excited expression. 2 golden medicinal pills lay quietly in the jade bottle under the mouth of the blue dragon medicine cauldron. The surface of the medicinal pills was golden like paint. A fragrance wafted out, forming a golden cloud above Xiaochen's head that lingered for a long time. Naturally, the breakthrough sage pill that countless cultivators of the Kunlun realm yearned for but could not obtain was in the jade bottle. Unexpectedly, he succeeded in refining 2 sets of ingredients. Even Xiaochen himself had not expected this. Normally speaking, the success rate of refining the breakthrough sage pill was only 50%. Hence, Xiaochen prepared 2 sets of ingredients. However, even so, if one's luck was extremely bad, one might not even be able to refine a single breakthrough sage pill. The principle behind this was easy to explain. For example, if one prepared 10 sets of ingredients, based on the success rate, one would succeed 5 times but also fail 5 times. Extremely bad luck meant that the first 2 pills that one refined happened to be among the 5 that failed. However, Xiaochen's luck this time was so good that even he did not expect it. He succeeded twice in refining 2 times in a row. Xiaochen waved his long sleeves and swept away all the remaining ingredients on the stone table. Then he held a breakthrough sage pill in his palm. His excited emotions slowly calmed down. The breakthrough sage pill greatly increased one's chances of advancing to martial sage. However, it did not mean that one would definitely advance to martial sage. The more crucial the moment, the more one could not be careless. On the stone pillar, Cheong wiped the sweat off her forehead. As she looked at the perfectly merged core painting piece before her, she revealed a gratified expression. She could not help but look up, wanting to see the situation on Xiaochen's side. When she saw the golden clouds in the sky, she said softly, "Auspicious clouds turning golden. This is a mysterious phenomenon that only appears in legends. It looks like he really succeeded in refining the breakthrough sage pill." However, even with the breakthrough sage pill, there was no guarantee that Xiaochen would advance to martial sage. Xiaochen did not know whether he could grasp this opportunity or not. Cheong withdrew her gaze and looked at the core painting piece that was glowing with light. Whether she could advance to martial sage or not would depend on this gamble. Xiaochen sat cross-legged on the stone table. Without hesitation, he placed the breakthrough sage pill in his mouth and slowly chewed it. The medicinal pill was slightly bitter and definitely not tasty. However, its fragrance filled the mouth and spread out, clearing one's mind. When the medicinal pill was completely chewed, Xiaochen's throat moved for a while before he swallowed it down. Boom! It was like a flame was burning. Xiaochen's face immediately flushed red. Then, the redness quickly spread throughout his body. A berserk energy spread throughout his body, advancing rapidly. Xiaochen calmed himself and slowly gathered the scattered golden energy. With his hard work, this berserk energy slowly cooled down and became controllable. Xiaochen did not panic in the face of trouble and did not panic in the face of trouble. At this moment, his good mental state and cultivation were on full display. He also received good returns. The berserk medicinal energy of the breakthrough sage pill gathered into a surging river. Xiaochen controlled this river to attack the bottleneck of peak half-sage. Invisibly, the door of sages that he had seen many times appeared in front of him. A small crack appeared on the door. A faint radiance came out. The mysterious world behind the crack in the door was currently beckoning to Xiaochen. Bang! Under Xiaochen's control, the golden river surged and attacked the bottleneck of half-sage in his body for the first time. The door of sages shook a few times but did not move at all. Xiaochen felt his internal organs tremble. Blood leaked out of the corner of his lips. There was a price to pay for using a medicinal pill to forcefully break through to sage. The churning of his internal organs and the pain coming from his bones and muscles were the manifestation of this price. At this point, Xiao Chen no longer had a way out. He could only charge forward continuously. If he charged forward, everything would be clear. If he cowered in fear, he would be destined to be mediocre for the rest of his life. He would not be fated with the great Tao. After the repeated attempts, the medicinal energy of the breakthrough sage pill slowly decreased. However, Xiao Chen's obsession did not diminish. His hot-bloodedness did not subside. The thought of giving up never appeared in his heart. There were only a few gambles in life. Some people did not even have the chance to gamble. I, Xiao Chen, am very lucky to obtain the breakthrough sage pill. How can I give up so easily? Boom! After several more attempts, Xiao Chen suddenly felt relaxed. The bottleneck of peak half-sage shattered with a bang. The door of sages in the formless world seemed to be gently pushed by someone. It suddenly opened and a bright light poured out. The blood at the corner of Xiao Chen's lips had not dried yet. However, an indescribable joy appeared on his face. I succeeded. The calm of peak half-sage was broken. The door of sages opened. At this moment, Xiao Chen transcended mortality and became a sage. He advanced to martial sage at the age of 23. A bright light spread out from Xiao Chen's body, and a boundless amount of spiritual energy spread out from his body. Then, it formed a multicolored pillar of light soaring into the sky. A resplendent purple heavenly sage law as thick as a thumb appeared behind Xiao Chen, followed by another. When Xiao Chen advanced to martial sage, all his quintessence would turn into heavenly sage laws. With this, he would be able to use the heavenly sage laws as he pleased. From now on, the only advantage he had over inferior-grade martial sages would no longer exist. The heavenly sage laws appeared continuously. As electric light flickered, they merged. They looked like a river of electricity gushing endlessly. Only after 300 thumb-thick heavenly sage laws appeared did they stop. Xiao Chen suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as deep as autumn water, radiating the light of wisdom and boundless spirituality. A kilometer away, Ying Qiong, who was encased in a 5-colored pillar of light, opened her eyes almost at the same time. Her originally beautiful face now glowed with radiance. She was a beauty that could topple the world, a peerless beauty. Coincidentally, Xiao Chen and Ying Qiong advanced to martial sage one after the other, almost at the same time. However, the changes to Ying Qiong's body were much greater than Xiao Chen's. She was not a cultivator who tempered her body. The instant she advanced to martial sage, her physical body advanced to a rank 1 sage body, undergoing an earth-shattering improvement. Xiao Chen's physical body was already a rank 2 sage body long ago. This advancement only brought his rank 2 sage body to its peak. He did not make any further breakthroughs, so he did not seem to have changed much. On the other hand, Ying Qiong's skin was as soft as water. She looked like a painting, and her beauty was outstanding. Her previous noble aura was even more holy, inviolable. She looked like a flower and the moon, very beautiful. With a flip of his hand, the lunar shadow saber appeared in Xiao Chen's left hand. A fighting spirit blazed in his eyes as he looked at the other party. A mysterious wooden umbrella appeared in Ying Qiong's delicate hand. She grasped it and pointed it at Xiao Chen. A similar fighting spirit blazed in her eyes. The two did not really want to fight to the death. Instead, they wanted to familiarize themselves with this energy after advancing to martial sage. To each of them, both sides were obviously ideal opponents, and there was nothing more suitable than using them to test their current strength. Electric light flashed under Xiao Chen's feet, and he drew the lunar shadow saber. The heavenly sage laws behind him absorbed the spiritual energy that was everywhere. With the help of the purple heavenly sage laws, the spiritual energy turned into lightning-attributed energy without the need to filter it. It flowed around Xiao Chen's body like a great river, gushing endlessly. Chapter 8:27. What a strong force! The speed at which it changes is also unexpectedly fast. Xiao Chen rejoiced in his heart. He waved his hand, and a large purple saber light shot out in all directions like lightning. Dang! The umbrella gently tapped, and Ing Qiong accurately struck the weak spot of this saber strike. The gentle water-attributed energy in his body moved slowly. It was thin and silent, but it flowed endlessly. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, "Good?" Then, he quickly spun around and executed the starting stance of the lightning tribulation saber technique. A purple light flashed on Xiao Chen's forehead. The light of his will, combined with the berserk lightning-attributed energy, formed a strong might and pressed down on Ing Qiong. When the saber descended, lightning tore through the clouds in the sky. This saber strike was like a bolt of lightning tearing through the air. It was very powerful. Ing Qiong did not panic. He suddenly opened the umbrella in his hand. Bang! When the entire umbrella opened, it moved all the water-attributed spiritual energy behind him, not leaving a single drop behind. When the umbrella opened, a circular water screen spanning a kilometer formed a huge barrier, firmly enclosing Ing Qiong. If seen from a distance, the circular water screen looked like an incredibly huge umbrella in the air. It opened together with the umbrella in Ing Qiong's hand. When the berserk energy in Xiao Chen's saber strike struck the circular water screen, it immediately scattered and turned into bolts of electricity crackling and flickering. After easily resolving Xiao Chen's saber strike, Ing Qiong smiled faintly. He twisted his right hand, and the umbrella immediately closed up. The umbrella-shaped water screen in the air also closed up but did not disappear. Ing Qiong pointed with the umbrella, and the closed water screen stabbed at Xiao Chen like a spear. In an instant, Xiao Chen's figure flashed and brushed by Xiao Chen's shoulder. The closed water screen landed on the ground and stabbed deeply into it. The two exchanged moves in midair, familiarizing themselves with their strength after advancing to martial sage. Compared to Xiao Chen, although Ing Qiong looked at ease, he did not have many opportunities to counterattack, doing his best to defend. After exchanging another 100 moves, Xiao Chen executed the lightning tribulation saber technique. The might of the earthly lightning tribulation, the heavenly lightning tribulation, and the divine lightning tribulation had more than doubled. However, the umbrella in Ing Qiong's hand clearly had a great origin. It was a heaven-defying item for defense. It could withstand 3 great lightning tribulations and still remain unscathed. Just as Xiao Chen was about to execute twin dragons playing with pearls, Ing Qiong closed up the umbrella and landed on the stone pillar below. He smiled and said, "That's enough. If we continue, we will end up making a fool of ourselves." Xiao Chen sheathed his saber and stared at the umbrella. He said, "What is the name of this umbrella?" "It is a good umbrella." "What? Are you eyeing my heavenly downpour umbrella? You do not cultivate the gentle water art. Even if I gave it to you, it would be useless." Ing Qiong leaned the umbrella on his right shoulder and smiled gently. Xiao Chen did not know what rank the heavenly downpour umbrella was, but it was at least an inferior grade king-grade secret treasure. In the past, Ing Qiong could not bring out much of the might of this secret treasure. Now, it seems like he cannot bring out the full power of this umbrella. Otherwise, it should be able to block 70% of my strength. Xiao Chen quickly analyzed the situation in his heart. The disciples of large clans should have king-grade secret treasures. In the future, when I face the successors of sovereign sects and sovereign noble clans, I will have to be careful. Without replying to Ing Qiong, Xiao Chen stretched out his hand, and the 72 universe flags buried deep in the ground quickly returned to Xiao Chen's hand. Ing Qiong gently jumped down and landed before Xiao Chen. He said, "Let's go." Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. He smiled and said, "I am returning to the Haotian sect. Are you coming with me? Could it be that there is no place for you in the Ing clan?" Ing Qiong felt it was strange. He asked, "Returning to the Haotian sect? You are in such a rush to advance to martial sage. Could it be that it is not for the Sage Mark Monument that appears once every 10 years? There is still half a month before it opens, and you are going back just like that? Sage Mark Monument? Ao Jiao, what is that?" This was the first time Xiao Chen heard these words. He could not help feeling suspicious, so he asked about Ao Jiao. "The Sage Mark Monument is about to open? In that case, Xiao Chen, it looks like you will not be able to return for the time being. That Sage Mark Monument stands in the Kunlun mountain range. It has existed since the ancient era and appears once every 10 years. As long as one can carve their name on it, they are qualified to enter. There are many treasures in there. Furthermore, even if one fails to obtain it, there will not be any danger to one's life. At most, one will be sent out. Even if one is unlucky, one will be able to obtain a few good sage-grade secret treasures. Only inferior-grade martial sages are allowed to carve their name on it. Of course, whether one can carve their name on it or not is another matter. Speaking of which, this sage mark monument has existed for a long time. Being able to carve one's name on it is an honor recognized by the peak cultivators. When Xiao Chen heard Ao Jiao's explanation, he entered deep thought. Originally, he had intended to think of a way to return to the Sky Dome realm after returning to the Haoyan sect. He would settle some matters of the past and meet some old friends. After that, he would have nothing to worry about and focus on the martial Dao, breaking through to martial emperor. Unexpectedly, the Sage Mark monument happened to appear. This made Xiao Chen somewhat hesitant. Ao Jiao egged him on, go on then. Back then, the Thunder King also carved his name on it. However, it was on the same level as the Qing emperors. Don't you want to try and see how high you can carve your name on it? The demonic geniuses of the various races have been stuck at half-sage for so many years. With the heavenly dew divine spring, they must have already advanced to martial sage. This time, the Sage Mark Monument's appearance will definitely attract all the various races over. The most important thing is that there are spirit veins in there. Look at the lunar cassia tree in the immortal spirit ring. It will take at least 300 years for it to mature. With a few rank 1 spirit veins, it will definitely mature in 3 to 5 years. The last sentence thoroughly moved Xiao Chen. If he fought for spirit veins outside, he would have to face Grandmaster-level martial sages at the very least. There would be no hope at all. If there really were spirit veins in this Sage Mark monument, as long as he faced martial sages of the same cultivation realm, Xiao Chen would be very confident. When Ying Qiong saw Xiao Chen remain silent, he thought of something and said, "You have only been in the Kunlun realm for 2 years. It is not strange that you have not heard of the Sage Mark monument." Xiao Chen denied this. "I have heard a little about the Sage Mark monument. However, aren't you afraid of your clan finding out that you are swaggering around?" Ying Qiong smiled in disappointment and frustration. The struggle between the large clans is not as straightforward as you imagine. When I meet with that Ying fan, I might even act even more intimate than before. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. His words actually meant that he wanted to use this as an excuse to take his leave. Given the intelligence of this girl, she should be able to understand that he did not want to get into any unnecessary trouble. Let's go then. The Kunlun mountain range runs through the profound domain. It stretches on for who knows how long. Without me leading the way, even if you ask around, you might not be able to find the Sage Mark monument in half a month. A crafty look flashed in Ying Qiong's eyes as he revealed a faint smile on his face. Don't ask me. It has been so many years. How could I still remember the way? Furthermore, a regular martial monarch would not know where the Sage Mark monument is. You will still have to travel with her. Ao Jiao's innocent words from the immortal spirit ring extinguished Xiao Chen's last hope. The Kunlun mountain range stretched from east to west, spanning the entire profound domain. Aside from the main peak that Xiao Chen had been to before, there were countless secondary peaks. Even if one spent 10 years, one would not be able to walk through all the secondary peaks. The Sage Mark monument was like a drop of water in a lake. It would be hard to follow. Xiao Chen rejoiced. Fortunately, he had Ying Qiong with him on this trip. Otherwise, even if he found out the way, he would have to go around in circles, wasting a lot of time. Amid the boundless mountain range, a towering monument towered into the clouds on an ordinary-looking flat ground at the waist of a mountain. There were several peaks of various heights in the surroundings, all of them at least 5 kilometers tall. Clouds and birds lingered around the peaks. Many cultivators of the various races stopped on the various peaks. When one looked around, they were all martial sages. Some of them were not even inferior-grade martial sages. All of them had long and deep auras. They should be idle older generation martial sages or the elders of the various sects and clans. Their main purpose here was to see how much the younger generation had grown. To these people, no matter how famous they were, no matter how incredible they were, it was not as realistic as the Sage Mark Monument. Whether one could carve their name on it, how high could one carve it, whether one could surpass the famous experts of history who had been immortalized for hundreds of generations. Only then could one truly prove one's extraordinary talent. Otherwise, one would just be a fake genius. This was because since ancient times, those famous geniuses in history had all carved their names on the Sage Mark Monument. History had proven their glory. Their legendary feats further emphasized the extraordinariness of the Sage Mark Monument, making it even more famous. Even more cultivators gathered at the foot of the Sage Mark Monument. A rough count came to at least 3,000. Without exception, all of them were inferior-grade martial sages. These were all cultivators waiting to carve their names on the Sage Mark Monument. However, with one glance, most of them were middle-aged. There were even quite a few old people. There were very few of the younger generation. However, the older generation experts on the various peaks and the martial monarchs who came to watch the excitement all focused on the younger generation. The reason was none other than these youths being the main characters of this Sage Mark Monument's opening. The old men and middle-aged martial sages were just supporting characters. Even if these people felt dissatisfied, they could not change this fact. Cultivators who could advance to inferior-grade martial sage before the age of 30 were definitely demonic geniuses. They would only appear in large numbers in the age of geniuses. In a normal age, when one appeared, they would immediately become an outstanding talent that would lead an era. These people did not look very old. However, they could easily defeat those of higher cultivation, not to mention ordinary late-stage inferior-grade martial sages. Even if a medial-grade martial sage came, he would not be able to do anything to these youths in a one-on-one fight. If he was not careful, he might end up capsizing, ruining his reputation. There was a faint golden barrier 100 meters away from the stone tablet, preventing others from approaching. Chapter 8:28. The barrier's thickness and energy weakened at a visible rate. When it completely vanished, it would be time to leave one's name. Xiao Chen and Ying Qiong each wore a cloak, hiding their identities. Then, they blended into the crowd and looked around. Of the younger generation, only 4 people came. Xiao Chen recognized one of them. It looked like Di Wuk, Wang Can, and Kong Yuan's group had not arrived yet. That person was Yan Shisan. He wore black and held the heavenly ice sword in his hand. He stood at the side with a grave and stern expression, staring at the Sage Mark Monument. Yan Shisan had been a half-sage for many years. With the heavenly dew divine spring as an opportunity, he advanced to martial sage. This did not exceed Xiao Chen's expectations. After Ying Qiong's introduction, Xiao Chen gained a better understanding of the other 4. They were geniuses of the other races. The factions they belonged to were similar to the sovereign noble clans of the human race. Xiao Chen paid special attention to a man with bare arms. If he did not see wrong, this person walked the path of advancing to martial sage with the physical body alone. Just by relying on his physical body, this person directly advanced to martial sage. After asking Ying Qiong, Xiao Chen learned that this person was called Kuei-do, a member of the corpse race. Kuei-do's ancestor was the famous Iron Hand sovereign of the Profound Domain. He was a legendary character who advanced to sovereign martial emperor by relying on his physical body alone. However, he had already left the corpse god palace and led his clan to settle down in the Profound Domain. As for the other 3, they did not leave a deep impression on Xiao Chen. Of course, it was not that they were not powerful. It was just that they did not leave a particularly outstanding impression on Xiao Chen. Without a doubt, anyone who could advance to martial sage before the age of 30 was not a minor character. The Peacock King's descendant, Kong Yuan, is here. Suddenly, Ying Qiong said, the person with him seems to be the Fox King's descendant, Yuan Su. Xiao Chen looked over and saw a handsome man in blue beside Kong Yuan. That man had the unique elegance of a silver moon spirit fox. He was even more handsome than Xian Yu, whom Xiao Chen had met before. However, he had the bloodline of a king. It diluted the feminine aura of the silver moon spirit fox race, making him look even more charming. It's said that he's even stronger than Kong Yuan. When the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring opened last time, he happened to be at the crucial moment of breaking through to the fifth tail, so he couldn't make it in time, Ying Qiong whispered to Xiao Chen. Of the 5 major races, the Fiend race had the most people but was indeed the weakest. This was because the Fiend race only had 2 sovereign martial emperors, the Peacock King and the Fox King. When the descendants of the 2 sovereign martial emperors arrived, the Fiend race martial sages present all followed their lead and stood behind them. The Fox King and the Peacock King were highly respected in the demon domain. Naturally, their descendants were widely respected as well. They were the focus of their own race and had high hopes for the 2 of them. They hoped that the 2 of them could fight for the demon race's honor and carve their names a little higher. Whoosh! A sinister wind blew overhead, and 8 illusory spirits carrying a white palanquin descended. These were the top figures of the ghost race's younger generation. The ghost race girl named Qing Cheng, who had once scared Xiao Chen, walked out. After she came out, 3 more men and women appeared in the palanquin. She must have brought along the demonic geniuses of the ghost race's younger generation. The ghost race had fewer people, but 4 of them came. This proved that they were stronger than the Fiend race. The inferior grade martial sages of the ghost race all gathered behind these 4 and started discussing in soft voices. It was fine if they did not come. However, the demonic geniuses of the younger generation did not stop once they arrived. After a while, the youths of the corpse race and the human race arrived almost at the same time. Of the corpse race's side, Xiao Chen only recognized Wang Can, whom he had fought before. He did not recognize the others, only seeing them once in the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring. On the human race's side, the ones who came were all familiar. As expected, the son of the 3 holy masters had relied on the opportunity of the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring to break through the bottleneck that had plagued him for many years, advancing to martial sage in one go. Aside from these, of the 7 giants, the 3 who had soaked in the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring, Bai Wuxue and Juanxi and Xue Lingling, also relied on this opportunity to advance to martial sage. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief. If not for the breaking sage pill, which allowed him to advance to martial sage in advance, this group of people would have surpassed him. In the end, Xiao Chen had only been a half-sage for less than a year. Compared to Juanxi and the others, who had been stuck there for at least 4 or 5 years, his accumulations were lacking. Xiao Chen could not rely on the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring to raise his comprehension ability and break through the bottleneck. Even without the breaking sage pill, he could advance to martial sage in another year, no weaker than these people. However, by then it would be too late. The Sage Mark Monument would open only 10 years later. Hu Qi! A golden light flashed, and Di Wuk and the white-haired divine daughter arrived, leading the 13 inferior grade martial sages of the deity race. As the light flickered, it immediately attracted the gazes of all the cultivators on the surrounding peaks. The remaining deity race cultivators all revealed fervent expressions. They quickly flew over and gathered behind Di Wuk and the others. Xiao Chen found this strange. The deity race was ridiculously strong. Di Wuk and the white-haired divine daughter had already advanced to martial sage long ago. Now, they were peak inferior grade martial sages. Aside from these 2, the other 13 people who soaked in the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring previously had all advanced to martial sage as well. Furthermore, it was obvious that the number of people on their side was greater than that of the warriors from the other races. Strange. Didn't the humans say that a descendant of the Qing Emperor appeared? Why do I not see him? Could it be that he did not advance to martial sage? The golden barrier before the Sage Mark Monument weakened. The demonic geniuses of the various races had already arrived, but Xiao Chen was still nowhere to be seen. Several people started muttering to themselves in doubt. Naturally, Xiao Chen, who was mixed in with the human group, could not hear the discussions on the surrounding peaks. He would have to send out his spiritual sense to hear them from such a distance. Xiao Chen wore the cloak mainly to avoid trouble. He did not want the people of the other 3 sovereign noble clans to know of his whereabouts. As for what Ing Qiong was thinking, Xiaochen did not know. He could not be bothered to think about it either. However, Xiaochen took note of the discussions of the surrounding martial sages. After a while, he gained a much better understanding of this sage mark monument. As long as a cultivator got within 100 meters of the sage mark monument, they would feel a huge pressure. This pressure came from the mysterious energy within the monument. This pressure was not formless. Not only would it affect the cultivator's mind, but it would also restrict the cultivator's ability to fly. The higher one flew, the greater the pressure. The higher one's name was carved on the monument, the more people would look at the cultivator in a different light. However, it did not mean that one would be able to carve their name on the monument just because they flew high. Carving words on the monument was not a simple matter. In the past sage mark monuments, there had been many ambitious people who wanted to carve their names higher, blindly trying to fly higher. However, these people could not endure the pressure when they were carving their names. Before they could finish writing, they were knocked back, missing out on the opportunity to carve their names. After carving one's name on the monument, it did not mean that it would not disappear forever. If a cultivator did not advance to martial emperor in the future, the name they left on the sage mark monument would vanish after 1,000 years. If one climbed to the peak and became Emperor Wu, the name they carved would turn purple and vanish only after 5,000 years. Only when one became a sovereign martial emperor would their name turn gold. Only then would it last forever, existing with the monument, never to disappear. Under the hood, Xiaochen looked at the monument, which he could not see clearly due to the barrier. Then he revealed an interested expression. The monument was only 3 kilometers tall. If not for the fact that it was erected at the waist of the mountain, its height of 3 kilometers would be as ordinary as it could be among the many famous mountains of the Kunlun realm. However, such a monument recorded all the famous experts of the martial epic in the past 100,000 years. Each monument represented a Kunlun realm. Just at this moment, the barrier vanished, and the 3-kilometer-tall sage mark monument revealed itself. From a few hundred meters away, Xiaochen could clearly see the names on the monument. The first thing that entered his eyes were the golden names at the top of the monument. These names shone brilliantly under the refraction of the sun. Each name was a legend. When anyone saw the golden names of their race's cultivators, no matter who it was, they would feel yearning, reverence, longing, and pride. At first glance, Xiaochen was attracted by these golden names. However, when he looked again, he shifted his gaze to the bottom of the monument. Compared to the golden names that everyone paid attention to, the names below did not seem to attract much attention. However, the names were densely packed together, several hundred times more than the golden names. They were like the cornerstone at the bottom of a pyramid. Xiaochen slowly moved his gaze upwards. The further he looked, the less densely packed the names were. After 1,000 meters, there would be at most 10 names engraved on each row. On the 1-meter-wide stone tablet, the names were very sparse. 1 kilometer was also a dividing point. After 1 kilometer, one could vaguely see some purple names. 2 kilometers was another dividing line. When Xiaochen looked further up, all the names were purple. Occasionally, he would even find a golden name. Even among the purple names, this golden light was very eye-catching. The moment it appeared, people would immediately notice it, forgetting about their surroundings. As Xiaochen continued moving his gaze upwards, he fixed it on the 3-kilometer mark. There were only 2 names standing side by side. One was the Thunder King and the other was the Qing Emperor. There were still 300 meters above Xiaochen, the highest point of the entire monument. However, the 100 meters above the Qing Emperor was empty. There were no names at all. However, after this 100 meters, there was a large number of golden and glistening names. The denseness of the rows was flabbergasting. There were more than 20 names in each row, almost as dense as the row at the bottom. If one understood the history of the Kunlun realm's martial epic, they would not find such a mysterious phenomenon strange. One stone monument was the entire Kunlun realm. This saying was not exaggerated. The densely packed names 100 meters above the Qing Emperor were densely packed. This represented the peak of the ancient era's martial epic. During that era, martial emperors were as common as the clouds, sages filled the streets, and sovereign martial emperors appeared one after another. Chapter 829. The remaining 100 meters of blank space was the time after the savage desolate war of the emperors. The various races had weakened, their strength plummeting. The peak of the martial Tao was gone forever. This lasted until 10,000 years ago, when the strongest sovereign martial emperor of the ancient era, the Qing Emperor, appeared. Only then did he carve his name at the 3-kilometer mark that had not been carved for tens of thousands of years. Compared to the ancients, there was still a significant gap. Even the Qing Emperor could not touch the many legendary names of that magnificent era. However, the names of the Qing Emperor and the Thunder King still far surpassed the names of the sovereign martial emperors of the past 10,000 years. The area 100 meters below the two names was blank. There were no names at all. Only after 100 meters were some purple and gold names visible. Compared to the Qing Emperor, the Thunder King's gold name was much dimmer. The Qing Emperor's name was as dazzling as the stars. However, the Thunder King's name was just an ordinary gold. After seeing so many names, Shaochen guessed that the luster of the name had something to do with the strength of the person. The Thunder King had died mysteriously not long after advancing to sovereign martial emperor. Naturally, his strength could not compare to the Qing Emperor at his peak. Seeing the two names side by side, Shaochen could not help but feel even more pity for the Thunder King. If nothing unexpected happened, the Thunder King might really be the second Qing Emperor. The densely packed golden names were about 100 meters long. However, when the Sage Mark Monument reached the highest point, there was not a single name to be seen. Only blurry traces could be seen, but it was unclear who had left those traces and when they had been left behind. Where did these people go and where they were now? This had always been a mystery in the Kunlun realm. Several people guessed that those who could leave marks at the highest point might have become the legendary martial gods. However, no one in this world had ever seen a martial god. The legends about martial gods were only recorded in some documents. Most of the records were oral accounts that could not be verified. There were no actual examples. The martial god was still an illusory legend to all martial artists. The shock that the Sage Mark Monument brought to everyone lingered for a long time. After reading through this stone monument, it was like experiencing the entire history of the martial epic. Only after a long time did someone come back to his senses. With a light leap, he arrived in front of the stone tablet and was about to carve his name on it. Under the premise of guaranteeing a spot, it was naturally better to carve one's name as high as possible. Everyone would have a trace of vanity and a competitive heart. The number of people eager to give it a try kept increasing. Soon, the boundary of 1,000 meters was broken by someone. Names kept breaking the height of others. However, after half a day, no one had been able to break through the boundary point of 2 kilometers. A few middle-aged cultivators wanted to give it a try. In the end, they failed. They vomited blood and fell to the ground, losing their qualifications to enter the Sage Mark Monument. A figure flashed and landed below the Sage Mark Monument. When the other cultivators who were preparing to leave their names saw this person, they immediately stopped what they were doing and focused their gazes on him. The Peacock King's grandson, Kong Yuan, is here. It looks like he will be the first to break the 2-kilometer record today. The names that reached the 2-kilometer mark all became Emperor Wu. This person soaked in the heavenly dew divine spring and will definitely advance to martial emperor within 100 years. It looks like the 2-kilometer mark is not difficult for him. I wonder how far he can go. Back then, the Peacock King seemed to have left his name at the 2,500-meter mark. The higher one flies, the greater the pressure. Every 10 meters from the 2,000-meter mark, the pressure increases exponentially. Furthermore, one still has to leave their name in the air. This is a problem for anyone. It is hard to say how high he can go. As the first younger generation cultivator to step up, Kong Yuan received a lot of attention. Not only did all the cultivators here look over, but the cultivators watching from the surrounding peaks also focused their gazes on him. Kong Yuan did not hesitate. He pushed off the ground and soared into the air. He did not feel any pressure within 1 kilometer. After 1 kilometer, Kong Yuan's expression turned grave, and his speed slowed significantly. After 1,500 meters, his thick eyebrows were already deeply knitted together. Clearly, the pressure was already significant. However, Kong Yuan was Kong Yuan after all. He did not disappoint the crowd and arrived at the 2,000-meter mark. The many fiend race cultivators all revealed smiles on their faces. However, that Kong Yuan did not show any intention of stopping. He continued to ascend. At this moment, Kong Yuan could see that Kong Yuan's face was practically twisted together as he gritted his teeth. Sweat covered Kong Yuan's forehead. Every 10 meters was exceptionally difficult. The fiend race cultivators could not help but break out in a cold sweat, feeling anxious for him. Kong Yuan arrived at the 2,500-meter mark after much difficulty. Then he saw a familiar name. That was his grandfather, one of the 2 remaining sovereign martial emperors of the fiend domain. Kong Yuan relaxed his frown and revealed a smile. As he hovered in the air, a short sword appeared in his hand. Then he carved his name beside the Peacock King's name, stroke by stroke. Stone fragments flew everywhere, and light shone. The fiend race cultivators cheered thunderously. When Kong Yuan finished carving the last stroke, a beam of light entered his body and relieved the pressure he endured. As the fiend race cultivators looked at Kong Yuan like he was a hero, he slowly landed. Unexpectedly, the moment he made an appearance, he already tied with the Peacock King. The younger generation is truly unbelievable. As the first of the younger generation to make an appearance, Kong Yuan managed to achieve such a height. Not only did the fiend race cultivators rejoice, but the spectators were also slightly moved. The person who spoke was the physical body cultivator that Xiao Chen had paid special attention to earlier, the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei-do. Kong Yuan had just achieved such a height, yet he was looked down on. He felt angry in his heart. He said, "Kuei-do, don't spout such big words. If you have the guts, go and surpass me now." Kuei-do bared his arms, revealing his bulging muscles and perfect curves. As he looked at the names on the Sage Mark monument, he said, "Now is the age of geniuses. If I still use the standards of the older generation to measure myself, I will be underestimating myself." Kong Yuan smiled coldly and said, "What is the point of saying so much? I'll say it again. If you have the guts, go and surpass me now." The Iron Hand Sovereign and the Peacock King were both famous sovereign martial emperors of this generation. They were very strong and could shake up a region. The clash between their descendants immediately attracted the attention of several people. Kuei-do said calmly, "There is no need for you to say that. I am about to give it a try." Kuei-do leaped forward and arrived before the Sage Mark monument. Then he pushed off the ground and burst into the air. Kuei-do moved like an arrow, relying on the explosive power of his strong physical body. He crossed a height of 1 kilometer in an instant. Only when he reached a height of 2 kilometers did he slow down. A cold smile flashed in Kong Yuan's eyes. The true test was only starting now. The explosive power of a physical body cultivator was very strong. However, this was a battle of endurance. Once one's explosive power ran out, the formless pressure from the Sage Mark monument would instantly knock him back. However, before Kong Yuan's smile could freeze, Kuei-do pushed off the ground and soared up again. With a spurt of energy, he soared 550 meters. Kuei-do reached a height of 50 meters above Kong Yuan. Using his hand as a sword, he quickly finished carving his name. When he finished the final stroke, his figure wavered, and he landed firmly on the ground. When Kong Yuan saw his name on the Sage Mark monument surpassing him by 50 meters, his complexion paled in disbelief. The expressions of the many older generation martial sages and the martial monarchs watching the excitement on the surrounding peaks all changed slightly. The words, "The younger generation will surpass us in time," appeared in their hearts. Following that, the younger generation stepped out one after another. All sorts of height records were broken. From 2,500 meters to 2,900 meters, people continuously carved their names on the Sage Mark monument. In the previous Sage Mark monuments, Those who could carve their names at a height of 2,000 meters would be regarded as absolute geniuses by everyone. However, the current scene truly broadened everyone's horizons. There were quite a few people who didn't reveal their expressions, but when they truly left their names, they were all moving and shocking everyone. Under the hood, Xiao Chen's gaze did not remain idle. He took advantage of this opportunity to pay attention to the hidden experts of the various races. The goal was not to leave their names. After entering the Sage Mark Monument, the various treasures and spirit veins were the true targets. After observing for a while, Xiao Chen discovered some clues. Among the 4 people from the corpse race, there was a man with a mark on his forehead. This person remained silent. However, Wang Can's attitude toward this person was strangely respectful. Occasionally, he would lower his head and say something to this person. The mark on this person's forehead looked like a flower, a very strange flower. Xiao Chen felt that it looked like the legendary departed spirit flower. However, the mark was too small, so he could not be sure. Xiao Chen had long since paid attention to the girl named Qing Cheng from the ghost race. Now that he saw the martial sage, Xiao Chen found her even more unfathomable. Although the height at which the fiend race's Kong Yuan left his name had been surpassed repeatedly, Xiao Chen, who had seen Kong Yuan make a move before, did not think that he was much weaker than the others. Back then, Kong Yuan had blocked the combined martial technique of 13 deity race experts with a simple palm strike. That had left a deep impression on Xiao Chen. However, what caught Xiao Chen's attention was the handsome man beside Kong Yuan, the descendant of the Fox King, Yuan Su. The deity race cultivators have arrived. Just at this moment, a soft cry interrupted Xiao Chen's thoughts. Xiao Chen turned his head and saw 13 white-haired deity race cultivators arriving at the Sage Mark Monument together. Hu Qi! Light burst out as the 13 people advanced together. Before the eyes of the many cultivators, they continued to rise. Soon, they surpassed 2,500 meters. Startled cries rang out. All the cultivators present were stunned. Half of the people who could leave their names at 2,500 meters had already become sovereign martial emperors. Could it be that the deity race would give birth to 13 sovereign martial emperors in the future? Stone fragments flew everywhere. However, these 13 people only stopped when they reached 2,900 meters. Then, their fingers released a golden light as they started to write their names. 2,900 meters. After the Thunder King, no one has been able to carve their name here in the past few thousand years. I heard that when these 13 people advanced to martial sage, the supreme deity monarch conferred them the title of Keepers of Light. Keepers is a title second only to the protector elders of the Thousand Deity Church. Clearly, these 13 people are extraordinary. These 13 people are already so incredible. In that case, how high must the divine son Di Wuk and the divine daughter Tianyu Shi reach? Chapter 830. The moment the deity race's 13 people made their move, the atmosphere immediately reached a climax. Cries of shock and discussion rang out endlessly. The surrounding peaks discussed this as well. The expressions of the other races all turned unsightly. After the deity race arrived in the Kunlun realm from the outer realm, they had been harboring the ambition of unifying the Kunlun realm ever since the Emperor War. Now that the deity race was in a flourishing age, the living space of the other races would probably be suppressed again. Whoosh! Perhaps because the deity race was so arrogant, the human race's Yen Shisan, the fiend race's the Fox King's descendant Yuan Su, the ghost empress Shisun's disciple Qing Cheng, and the mysterious corpse race man with the mark on his forehead all made their move. On the Bushin Palace's side, the strongest of the 3 holy masters' disciples could no longer hold themselves back and took advantage of the situation to make their move. These people practically represented the strongest of the various races. They were all demonic geniuses among demonic geniuses, all of them outstanding talents. They could be said to be shining like the stars, resplendent and resplendent. Every one of their names would become a legend in the future, as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Only this Sage Mark Monument could make them make their move together. The cultivators on the surrounding peaks and the various races all held their breaths, waiting to see if these 7 could turn the tide against the strong deity race. 2,000 meters, 2,500 meters, 2,800 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,900 meters, 2,950 meters. The 7 did not disappoint the crowd, successfully surpassing the 13 keepers of the deity race. Stone fragments flew everywhere, and sunlight shone on the faces of these 7 talents. The scene froze. It was like they were not carving names but history. 1,000 years later, when all the names turned golden, history would become a legend, a myth passed down by later generations. The 7 landed and returned to the various races' teams. Thunderous cheers resounded. When Di-Wuk saw this scene, the light in his eyes flickered. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Tianyushi, how high do you think I can carve?" The white-haired divine daughter, Tianyushi, looked at the nameless mark at the top of the sage mark monument. She did not answer, remaining silent. The 13 keepers at the side answered one after another, "The divine son is talented. In the future he will definitely spread the glory of the deity race throughout the entire Kunlun realm. At the very least, he will be as famous as the Azure Demon." That's right. Back then, the Azure Demon had suppressed our god clan for more than 1,000 years. The divine son will definitely be as famous as him and push the god clan to another peak. Back then, when the deity race was at its peak, the Qing Emperor personally charged into the deity race's heavenly nation and killed a large number of deities. He even killed 4 or 5 deity kings that were as strong as sovereign martial emperors. Alone, Shaochen knocked down the deity race from its peak. Then he invented the dragon tone art, allowing the Dragon's Gate to suppress the deity race for several thousand years. He left behind the title of Azure Demon in the God Clan, but there was no need to doubt his strength. Even the God Clan, who were his enemies, had to admit it. It was not an insult to be on the same level as the Azure Demon, but it was a great honor. The 13 guardians all thought so. Di-Wuk narrowed his eyes and looked at the golden name of the Qing Emperor on the sage mark monument. He said, "It is time for me to continue the legend of the Qing Emperor from 10,000 years ago." A beam of golden light shot out, and Di-Wuk soared up. After the 7 peak experts of the various races achieved impressive results, he finally made his move. The beam of golden light was like a rainbow soaring into the sky. It did not slow down even after flying for 2,000 meters. Only when it reached 2,500 meters did it slow down. The light vanished, and Xiao Chen's figure appeared. Then he slowly climbed up before countless nervous gazes. He climbed to 2,800 meters, then to 2,900 meters. Then, he continued rising to 2,950 meters. Xiao Chen looked at the names of the various races' cultivators and smiled faintly. Then he paused for a moment. Just when everyone thought that Xiao Chen would not continue, Di-Wuk's white hair turned golden. Every strand of his golden hair gave off a bright light. He shouted, and his figure soared forward. Based on Xiao Chen's explosive power, it seemed like he was going to charge past the 3-kilometer mark. However, when he reached the 3-kilometer mark, his figure paused. It was like he felt a huge pressure, nearly knocking him back down. Di-Wuk stopped thinking about breaking through the 3-kilometer mark. He started to quickly write his name, carving the words Di-Wuk beside the Thunder King Sang-Mu. Reaching 3,000 meters, being on par with the Qing Emperor. After 5,000 years, someone had finally reached this level. A large group of deity race cultivators shouted excitedly. The nightmarish name of the Azure Demon had finally appeared in the deity race that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The 13 keepers of the deity race each sent out a beam of holy light, forming a 7-colored bridge in the air that extended to Di-Wuk's feet. Di-Wuk stood on the 7-colored bridge and looked down. Finally, his gaze stopped at the human group. He smiled faintly and said, "Sorry, you will not be able to continue the legend of the Qing Emperor. I will have to leave it to Di-Wuk." Di-Wuk's lazy tone coupled with his insufferably arrogant words showed that he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to plant the seed of invincibility in the hearts of the demonic geniuses of the various races. Ha! Di-Wuk, it is not up to you to say that. Who was it that dared to refute Di-Wuk in front of everyone after he was on par with the emperor? Everyone curiously searched for the source of the voice. They saw a black-cloaked cultivator walking out from the human group. Naturally, this person was Xiao Chen. He had come to the Sage Mark Monument mainly for the treasures in it. At the same time, he wanted to take a look at the true elites of the various races. He did not care much about whose name was carved higher and whose name was carved lower. Many years ago, the Thunder King had carved his name on par with the Qing emperors. However, so what? Now, it was clear whose name was more dazzling. The height of the name carved on the Sage Mark Monument was more of a symbol. To cultivators, its only practical use was as a ticket to enter the Sage Mark Monument. Even now, when all the geniuses of the various races were chasing after this so-called height, Xiao Chen's view did not change. He would not fight for this empty reputation. If he did not fight for this moment, after 10,000 years, whose name was still on the Sage Mark Monument and whose name was more dazzling would be judged by future generations. However, this Di-Wuk should not be like this. How could he continue the legend of the Qing Emperor? There were some things that he needed to say. Under the cloak, no one could see Xiao Chen's appearance. Everyone tried to guess this person's identity. Is it your place to interrupt when our divine son is speaking? Di-Wuk had carved his name on par with the Qing emperors. Unexpectedly, a random nobody from somewhere mocked him for such a glorious matter. Two deity race cultivators immediately leaped out and charged at Xiao Chen. Of the cultivators who came to leave their names, the weakest was an inferior grade martial sage. The two deity race cultivators who leaped out looked like middle-aged men. Furthermore, they were middle-stage inferior grade martial sages. They both executed the deity race's mental energy martial techniques and charged at Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness. In the blink of an eye, the two arrived before Xiao Chen. Their mental energy origin qi had already turned into a ferocious beast and entered Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness to wreak havoc. If Xiao Chen could not quickly eliminate the mental energy that the two sent in, the two charging over would be able to severely injure him with one punch each. The physical body and quintessence of the deity race were no weaker than that of regular human cultivators. Mental energy martial techniques were just their innate abilities. Xiao Chen smiled coldly. These two were trying to turn him into an idiot, crippling him, by entering his Sea of Consciousness so tyrannically. However, was it really that easy to enter Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness? The two ferocious beasts entered Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness. Before they could do anything, they saw a drifting purple talisman flash with a purple light, and the two ferocious beasts were chopped in half. Electric light exploded, and the two halves of the ferocious beasts were blasted into nothing without being able to resist. The ferocious beasts, which contained the mental energy of the two, did not even have a chance to retreat before Xiao Chen killed them. When the two deity race cultivators got within 1 meter of Xiao Chen, they suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood. Their complexions turned incredibly pale. Will of Thunder, hurry up and retreat. He has already erased our mental energy origin source. The two's eyes filled with horror. They felt so much regret that their intestines turned green. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen had comprehended a will. Furthermore, it was the will of Thunder, which had the greatest destructive power against mental energy. If they had known, they would not have been so bold as to send their mental energy into Xiao Chen's Sea of Consciousness to wreak havoc. That would have been no different from suicide. Trying to run now? It is too late. Since the two wanted to kill him, naturally, Xiao Chen would not show any mercy. The 3 heavenly sage laws in his body flowed into his palm. Then he stretched out his hand, and a strong wind sucked the two over. The heavenly sage laws flowed through Xiao Chen's body as he quickly executed the Kunpeng divine fist that he inherited from the Kunpeng king. A huge shadow soared up behind Xiao Chen. That was the legendary divine bird, the Kunpeng. When it spread its wings, it blocked out the radiance of the blazing sun. At this moment, when Xiao Chen executed the Kunpeng with his heavenly sage laws, its might was several times stronger than before. The huge shadow covered the entire mountain. With the sound of wings flapping, a strong gust of wind blew, and dust swirled around. Everyone involuntarily closed their eyes, and when they reopened their eyes, they found themselves in a daze. When they opened their eyes again, the Kun Peng materialized by the heavenly sage laws flew somewhere in the sky. The two deity race cultivators preparing to beat up Xiao Chen into an idiot immediately turned into a flash of scarlet. He directly turned into a bloody light, his bones shattered, and he died without a complete corpse. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen killed two deity race cultivators. The place fell silent. Everyone's expressions turned grave. Xiao Chen killed the deity race cultivators in front of Di Wuk. In this era where the deity race was unstoppable, even the older generation cultivators did not dare to do such a thing. Everyone looked at Di Wuk, who was on the seven-colored bridge. Their hearts sank. They were in big trouble. Di Wuk showed an uncertain expression. As he looked at the mysterious cloaked man below, he said coldly, "Aren't you being a little too heavy-handed?" Xiao Chen's expression did not change. His eyes rippled like autumn water as he replied calmly, "Being too heavy-handed? If I were not capable, my mind would have been wiped clean. I would probably be an idiot by now." Chapter 8:31. If you want to be reasonable, I will be reasonable with you. If you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Others might be afraid of you, Di Wuk, but I am not. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and gently flung the cloak off his body. His white robes fluttered in the wind as he looked up at Di Wuk, his heart calm and indifferent. It's the white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen. He advanced to martial sage. When Xiao Chen revealed his true appearance, he immediately elicited startled cries from the crowd. The news of the Qing Emperor's descendant appearing had already spread from the Tianwu domain to the entire Kunlun realm. When the Sage Mark Monument appeared, many people guessed whether Xiao Chen could rush over or not. After all, he had only advanced to half-sage for a short time, even if he was the Qing Emperor's descendant. Not many people thought that Xiao Chen could advance to martial sage in such a short time. His appearance today could be considered a huge surprise. No wonder he flew into such a rage. Di Wuk's earlier words really touched his reverse scale. Those two deity race cultivators deserved to die. If he offended them now, he would be seeking death. However, it is too irrational to mess with Di Wuk now. Di Wuk advanced to martial sage a year ago. Furthermore, no one has seen him use his full power. Xiao Chen just advanced to martial sage. He is probably not a match for Di Wuk. All sorts of discussions rang out endlessly. No one had expected that the matter of leaving one's name, which should have ended here, would take such a turn. When Di Wuk, who was in the air, saw Xiao Chen's face, his expression relaxed instead. It was like he had been waiting for him. He smiled and said, "Indeed, it is as I expected. You have indeed advanced to martial sage. Do you dare to leave your name? Let me see the strength of the Qing Emperor's descendant. Let's see who can continue the legend of the Qing Emperor." Xiao Chen had always been very calm. Even though Di Wuk kept goading him, he did not get angry. 10,000 years from now, the future generations would judge whose light was more dazzling. The reason why he stood out was to express his attitude and continue the legend of the Qing Emperor. It was indeed not his place to say such words. On the seven-colored arch bridge, Di Wuk was full of confidence. As long as Xiao Chen dared to compete with him, the contingency plan he left behind could ruin Xiao Chen's reputation, and he wouldn't even be able to carve his name on it in front of the world. At that time, not only would he be able to suppress Xiao Chen's sharpness, but he would also be unable to recover from this setback. The story of the so-called Qing Emperor would end here, and the legend would be continued by him. Now that Xiao Chen had been provoked by his words, the plan was already half complete. The remaining half was waiting for Xiao Chen to take the bait. Di Wuk, it's really not your turn to continue the legend and glory of my ancestors. No matter how high you carve your name, it will have nothing to do with the Qing Emperor or me. I am not the Qing Emperor. I am Xiao Chen. However, since you want to compete, I will compete with you, Xiao Chen said softly. Then he leaped up and arrived before the Sage Mark Monument. The bottom 10 meters of the Sage Mark Monument was empty. No one would carve their name here. Even if they could not do so, they would fly 30 or 40 meters before carving their name. However, they did not know that time was merciless. The names carved on the monument would disappear. After they disappeared, someone else would carve their name. After 10,000 years, no matter how high you carve your name, who would remember you without a name? Even if you became a sovereign martial emperor, how many people would seriously look at your dim light before the rows of dazzling golden words? Before everyone's incredulous gazes, Shao Chun stood before the Sage Mark Monument and carved his name at the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument. Shao Chun carved every stroke very seriously. He was Shao Chun, not the Thunder King or the Qing Emperor. You want to fight for this moment, but I will fight with you forever. Let's see whose light will be more dazzling after 10,000 years. Let's see who will remember whose name after 1,000 cycles of reincarnation. One monument, one Kunlun realm. How many sages had there been since ancient times? Who would take the initiative to carve their name at the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument? That was a corner that even cultivators who advanced to martial sage before 100 years old would scoff at. The cultivators present were flabbergasted. The densely packed crowds on the surrounding mountains were also flabbergasted. Some people did not understand. Some people smiled coldly in their hearts, thinking that Shao Chun knew that he was no match for Shao Chun and was just putting on a show. Some people entered deep thought, carefully pondering the meaning of Shao Chun's words. It seemed like they understood something, but at the same time, they did not. Among the crowd, the first senior sister, Shui Lingling, smiled faintly. Her soft and pretty face was indescribably beautiful. She said, "Junior brother Shao Chun looks like you really understand people. As long as one becomes a sovereign martial emperor, one's name will never disappear. The stronger one is, the brighter one's light will shine. It does not matter where it is." Under the black cloak, In Cheong was stunned by Shao Chen's startling actions for a while. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "This can be considered his style. There is indeed no point in fighting for a moment's glory." The white-haired divine daughter, Tian Yuxi, shifted her gaze away from a blurry spot at the top of the Sage Mark monument and looked at Shao Chen, who had left his name below. Then, she revealed a contemplative expression. Naturally, Di Wux's expression was the most interesting. As he looked at Shao Chen, who had left his name below, his expression froze. Why did Shao Chen leave his name below? In that case, all his preparations would have been for nothing. Originally, as long as Shao Chen dared to leave his name above, Di Wux was confident of immediately using his secret mental energy technique to make Shao Chen fall from the sky the instant he carved his name. The other deity races might fear the will of thunder, but Shao Chen did not. The cultivation technique he cultivated was the supreme deity canon of the sect, the most ancient cultivation technique of the deity race. If Shao Chen carved his name below, naturally, Shao Chen's preparations would be wasted. Shao Chen's plan to make Shao Chen lose his chance to enter the Sage Mark monument in a sorry state would also be foiled. In Shao Chen's heart, Shao Chen had always been a great threat. Right now, even if Shao Chen advanced to martial sage, he still did not feel strong enough. If Shao Chen really met Shao Chen, he would be able to defeat Shao Chen after putting in some effort. What Shao Chen feared was Shao Chen's potential and Shao Chen's growth speed. If Shao Chen really grew into a second Qing emperor one day, then the deity race's plan to unify the Kunlun realm would have to be shelved. If Shao Chen's plan succeeded, Shao Chen would deal a heavy blow to Shao Chen when he was at his most confident. Shao Chen would trample on Shao Chen in front of everyone. This would definitely leave a huge shadow in Shao Chen's heart. In the future, his cultivation would definitely be hindered. Unfortunately, Shao Chen's nature made this plan go up in smoke. Shao Chen did not know how long he would have to wait for a similar plan. "Shao Chen, I really overestimated you. Your courage is only so. I am as famous as your great-grandfather. All the outstanding talents in the world are suppressed by me. You are at the bottom. What qualifications do you have to compete with me? As a grandson, you are looking down on your great-grandfather too much." Di Wux recovered his wits and smiled faintly. Then he started mocking Shao Chen. His words implied that Shao Chen was a grandson. The expressions of many people changed. They could not tell that this Di-Wuk had such a venomous mouth. Just because he was on par with the Qing Emperor, he mocked Shao Chen like that. However, the deity race cultivators laughed loudly and started jeering. Even as a grandson, he has so many titles. What white-robed bladesman? What nonsense descendant of the Qing Emperor? He is merely a sort of just putting on airs and deliberately mystifying things. If you are truly capable, then surpass our divine son now. Otherwise, you are a grandson. Shao Chen's lips curled up slightly. He raised his head and looked at Di-Wuk. He smiled and said, Di-Wuk, I really overestimated you. Even though you are stronger than me now, it is only a matter of time before I surpass you. Shao Chen gently pushed off the ground and soared into the air like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at a height of 2 kilometers without any pressure. Shao Chen rose at a startling speed. 2,500 meters, 2,800 meters, 2,900 meters. Before Di-Wuk could react, Shao Chen brushed past him, surpassing the height of 3 kilometers. There were 2 kinds of pressure from the Sage Mark Monument. One was a formless pressure on a cultivator's mental energy, and the other was a visible pressure on the physical body. After observing for a long time, Shao Chen had figured out the mysteries of the Sage Mark Monument long ago. His mental energy cultivation was second only to Di-Wuk, and his physical body was second only to the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei-do. However, of all the people present, he was the only one who could merge the two perfectly. Since ancient times, only an inferior-grade martial sage had managed to achieve the same level of mental energy and physical body cultivation as Shao Chen at the same time. Due to the limitations of his physical body, Di-Wuk could not cross the 3-kilometer mark. However, Shao Chen did not have that many restrictions. Shao Chen clenched his teeth and charged over the final 300 meters of the Sage Mark Monument. Then he landed firmly on the top of the Sage Mark Monument. When Shao Chen looked down, the deity race cultivators who mocked Shao Chen were all dumbfounded and immediately shut their mouths. Earlier, they called Shao Chen a grandson because Di-Wuk stood taller than Shao Chen. However, now, Shao Chen was 300 meters taller than Di-Wuk. According to their logic, it was clear who was the grandson here. When the cultivators on the surrounding peaks saw Shao Chen standing at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, they all went into an uproar. Their eyes filled with disbelief. What the hell is going on? Did the pressure in the Sage Mark Monument lose its effect? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Don't tell me this is real. Shao Chen is actually standing at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. The martial monarchs and older generation sages on the peaks watching the excitement could no longer sit still. They all flew over, wanting to see what was going on. Di-Wuk's expression changed unpredictably. Earlier, he had used his height to mock Shao Chen for being a grandson. Unexpectedly, retribution paid. Shao Chen immediately stood at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, slapping his own face. Now, he did not even have the chance to take back his words. Shao Chen took out a bottle of wine from the universe ring and sat at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. Then he looked down at Di-Wuk. Shao Chen poured himself a cup of wine and smiled faintly. Di-Wuk, below me are the sages and sages of the ancient era. Your ancestor's grandfather is among them. You want to go even lower? Are you not even qualified to be a grandson? When it came to having a vicious mouth, Shao Chen would not lose to anyone. Since the other party had spoken, there was no need for Shao Chen to stand on ceremony. Chapter 8:32. The matters of the world were always unpredictable. Di-Wuk, who was feeling very pleased with himself earlier, had mocked Shao Chen for being a grandson. Shao Chen was immediately slapped in the face by his own words, not even qualified to be a grandson. The group of people below could not help smiling bitterly. This Di-Wuk was really unlucky. After today, this matter of him being a grandson would probably spread throughout the entire Kunlun realm. The divine son's illustrious reputation was destined to leave a stain that could never be washed away. Di-Wuk, let me offer you a toast on behalf of your ancestor's grandfather. Shao Chen gently poured the wine flask downwards. The clear and fragrant wine immediately flowed down in a straight line. Diwuk, who was originally so angry that he could not speak, flew into a complete rage. These words sounded like, "Come, grandson. Let me offer you a toast on behalf of your grandfather." Diwuk's figure flashed as he shouted. His white hair, which had already lost its color, turned golden again as he charged upwards. Xiao Chen's mental energy could withstand this pressure. However, his physical body could not. After barely advancing 10 meters, he felt like his bones were about to fall apart. This was the opportunity that Xiao Chen had been waiting for. His gaze turned cold as he casually tossed aside the wine flask in his hand. Then he soared into the air and kicked Diwuk's shoulder. This kick made use of the advantage of the Sage Mark Monument's descent. It was extremely fast. Diwuk, who was struggling to climb up, was caught off guard and struck. Bang! Diwuk was ruthlessly kicked down. His body somersaulted several times in the air. He felt like the bones in his shoulder had shattered. After this matter, Xiao Chen would definitely become a thorn in Diwuk's side. The enmity between the two had already been established. Since he could create an opportunity to deal a blow to Diwuk, naturally, Xiao Chen would not miss it. After kicking Diwuk, Xiao Chen's figure flashed. He withstood the pressure and stood at the top of the Sage Mark Monument once again. The surrounding group of people were all stunned. Diwuk, who had dominated the younger generation of Kunlun, was actually kicked to the ground by someone. This unimaginable thing actually happened in front of everyone's eyes. Looking at Diwuk, who was in the air, Xiao Chen felt that it was a pity. His kick just now had been very satisfying, but he had not been able to put much force into it. Thus, he had not been able to truly injure Diwuk. Diwuk took a step in the air, and for the first time, an unsuppressible killing intent gushed out from his eyes. A terrifying aura spread out from his body, and everyone below felt a chill down their spines. Sword of Initial Split Moment Awareness. With a soft shout, Diwuk suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed a finger. A speck of light emerged from his fingertip, and the world seemed to turn dark. The entire world seemed to only have that speck of light. Suddenly, a strand of sword chi shot out from the tip of his finger. This strand of sword chi pierced through all the darkness in the world. The sword chi pierced through the darkness and light like the first light of the world. In an instant, it shot towards Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen felt danger for some reason. He tilted his body slightly, and a weak strand of sword chi brushed past his face, cutting off a few strands of his hair. Although this sword was very mighty and fast, and the state it contained was vast and majestic, when it arrived before Xiao Chen, its might was negligible under the pressure of the Sage Mark Monument. Xiao Chen's expression turned grave, and the smile on his face slowly disappeared. Then he looked coldly at the other party. The Kunlun realm was destined to have only one main character. Today, Xiao Chen and Diwuk shed all pretense of cordiality. Xiao Chen's opponent was very strong. Even if he used his full power, he might not be able to defeat him. However, there was still a long way to go. The one who laughed last would be the one whose light would never fade. Beams of light started flickering on the Sage Mark Monument. The many cultivators who were watching the excitement all turned grave. This was a sign that the world in the Sage Mark Monument was about to open. Some of the inferior-grade martial sages who had not imprinted their names quickly stepped forward and imprinted their names. Diwuk withdrew the murderous intent in his eyes and glanced at Xiao Chen, who was at the top of the Sage Mark Monument. Then he calmly landed among the deity race cultivators. When a deity race cultivator saw Diwuk's sullen expression, he stepped forward and tried to curry favor with him. Divine Son, don't lower yourself to the same level as this fellow. This fellow is just a grandson. How can he compare to you? Diwuk's previously calm expression suddenly erupted. He sent this person flying with a palm strike and said, "Scram. Don't mention the word grandson in front of me." When the 13 keepers of light saw that person get sent flying, they revealed speechless expressions. This fellow really deserved it. He touched a sore spot. Even a fool could tell that Diwuk was now allergic to this word. The Sage Mark Monument was about to open. There were secret treasures, cultivation techniques, natural treasures, and all sorts of spirit veins waiting to be excavated by the inferior-grade martial sages. This fortuitous encounter was hard to come by. The cultivators of the various races and the demonic geniuses of the younger generation all raised their heads in anticipation. As Xiao Chen sat at the top of the Sage Mark Monument, he saw Di Wux's actions. Then he smiled faintly and withdrew his gaze. Xiao Chen shifted his gaze to the bottom of the Sage Mark Monument and entered deep thought. According to legend, the people who left these marks mysteriously left this world. Rumor had it that they all reached the martial god realm. According to the time recorded on the Sage Mark Monument, the row of golden names 3,200 meters above the Sage Mark Monument represented the peak of the ancient era. In that case, these marks were even above that. Could it be that the martial epoch had an even more distant era than the ancient era? Xiao Chen looked down. At the 3,200 meters above the Sage Mark Monument, he saw similar blurry marks among the rows of golden names. Xiao Chen seemed to figure something out in his mind. Then he used his finger to gently touch the mark at the bottom. Boom! A vast scene immediately appeared before Xiao Chen's eyes. A strand of saber light sweeping through the sky quickly chopped down at him. The face of the person who sent out the saber could not be clearly seen. The shout sounded like thunder rumbling in his sea of consciousness. Xiao Chen's body trembled and he quickly moved his finger away. This nearly caused him to fall off the Sage Mark Monument. Even if I am able to fly this high, I'm afraid that it will be difficult for me to leave my name on it. Xiao Chen thought to himself, that strand of saber light earlier was not sent out by the person who left the marks. Instead, it was made by the mysterious energy within the monument. Leaving one's name at the highest point was probably not something a martial sage could do. At the very least, no one here could block that formless saber light. Anyone who could leave a mark here was definitely not an inferior-grade martial sage. However, the rules of the Sage Mark Monument clearly limited one to inferior-grade martial sage. Even if Emperor Wu came, he would not be able to get close to the Sage Mark Monument. Could it be that the rules of the Sage Mark Monument were different from the ancient era? The flickering light became increasingly dazzling. The people who left their names on the monument could already feel the energy from the monument gently pulling at them. Just as the monument was about to open, a group of unwelcome guests suddenly flew over from the middle of the mountain. There were 2 men and 1 woman. Based on their auras, they did not belong to any of the 5 races. When someone saw their eyes and recognized their clothes, he was slightly stunned. Then, he said, the merfolk of the chaotic demonic sea. Why are they here? The Kunlun realm was very vast. Just the continent alone was hard to traverse. The boundless ocean was even more vast and boundless. Naturally, the Tianwu domain's people were more familiar with the chaotic demonic sea, which bordered the yellow soil demonic garden to the west. The merfolk were the overlords of the chaotic demonic sea. After the chaotic demonic sea, there was an even vaster oceanic world. There were also intelligent races like the merfolk. There were even a few extremely strong races. During the ancient era, it was said that Neptune unified the sea race. All the sea race obeyed the orders of the Neptune Palace. However, the Neptune Palace was destroyed long ago, and the sea race was very rare. The oceanic world of today had changed long ago. 2 males and 1 female. From their appearance, they didn't look much different from humans, except that their eyes were all a beautiful deep blue color. Xiao Chen paid special attention to their feet. It was said that the merfolk were born without feet. They had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish. Only when their strength reached a certain level could they freely take human form. When the 3 saw the flickering light on the Sage Mark Monument, they quickly flew forward to leave their names. They left their names at a height of 2,800 meters. Before Xiao Chen could figure out why these 3 merfolk were here, the Sage Mark Monument's suction forcefully pulled the people who had left their names. 10 days later, the cultivators that entered would automatically be sent out, and the Sage Mark Monument would close. The next time it would open would be 10 years later. When Xiao Chen opened his eyes, the scene of the Kunlun mountain range had already disappeared. In its place was a somewhat desolate grassland. There was no one else in the surroundings. The thousands of people here were probably sent to different places. Xiaochen raised his head and looked to the limits of his vision. In the very center of this world, there was a pillar of light connecting the sky and the ground, attracting Xiaochen's gaze. Ao Jiao, who was in the immortal spirit ring, explained that pillar of light is the treasury hall in the Sage Mark Monument. However, it will not be easy to walk over. The name Treasury Hall was easy to understand. Xiaochen asked, the treasures in there should not be taken away for nothing, right? Not only are there traps and secret tunnels in there, but there are also all sorts of ancient puppets. These puppets are not that easy to deal with. The combat puppets you came across in the Heaven Series training room were replicas of these ancient puppets. Xiaochen remembered the combat puppets in the Heaven Series training room clearly. Not only did they have combat memories, but they also had considerable intelligence. They could even grasp martial techniques and states. We'll see later. I need to collect spirit vein origins. There should not be any on this grassland. Xiaochen said after looking around. Although there were many spirit herbs in the immortal spirit ring, there were only two that he cared about, the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit. The lunar cassia tree produced lunar cassia flowers that could heal almost any injury. It was much more convenient than medicinal pills. The dragon mark fruit did not require much. It was a rare natural treasure that could directly strengthen a cultivator's vital qi. By using the spirit vein's origin to nurture it, it could increase its age significantly. If it could reach 1,000 years, even with Xiaochen's current cultivation, he would gain great benefits. Ao Jiao smiled and said, that is hard to say. You cannot use the logic of the outside world to judge this small world. The spirit veins in the outside world are all under the mountains. However, the spirit veins here might be under your feet. Chapter 8:33. Xiaochen closed his eyes and extended his spiritual sense to its maximum detection range of 10,000 meters. Then he scanned the area a few times in a circle but did not discover anything. Without a special sealing technique, one should be able to discover a spirit vein's origin easily from a distance. Don't search like that. The spirit vein's origin is hidden in a special layer of stone. No spiritual energy fluctuations will leak out. Departed spirit flowers will grow above the ground where the spirit vein's origin is hidden. If you find the departed spirit flowers, you will most likely find the spirit vein. Ao Jiao explained in detail to Xiaochen how to find the spirit vein here. Departed spirit flowers contain strong death energy. They were the favorites of the ghost race and corpse race. It was not strange for departed spirit flowers to grow in a place devoid of spiritual energy. Just as Xiaochen thought this, a purple, red, and blue light suddenly soared up from an extremely distant place in the vast savanna. Auspicious signs descended from the sky. Xiaochen frowned slightly. This was the sign of a spirit vein. Someone discovered the spirit vein so quickly. A tricolored light signified a rank 3 spirit vein. If a rank 3 spirit vein was suppressed in a mountain range, one could mine it for medial grade spirit stones. With this spirit vein, one could establish a sect in the Sky Dome realm. Furthermore, it would be a great sect. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Such a mysterious phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of several people. Several figures quickly flew towards the location of the spiritual light. Aside from cultivators, one could also hear horrifying beast roars. The native spirit beasts of the savannah were startled as well. The auras they gave off were all rank 9 spirit beasts that rivaled martial sages. Even Xiaochen felt some fear from some of these auras. It looked like this desolate savannah was not as peaceful as it appeared on the surface. Electric light burst out from under Xiaochen's feet. He turned into a beam of purple light and quickly flew over as well. After a few breaths, Xiaochen arrived at the location of the spiritual light. The place was chaotic, with cultivators of all races present. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators fought over a black flower. The fiend race, human race, and deity race cultivators chased after the spiritual light. Sparkling and translucent light leaked out from the ball of light and scattered in the air. The scene was very beautiful. Needless to say, the black flower was naturally the departed spirit flower. The death energy contained within it could rapidly increase the strength of the cultivators of the two races. The ball of light was a Tier 3 spirit vein origin. The human race cultivated true essence, the demon race cultivated demon essence, and the god race cultivated spiritual energy as well as true essence. No matter what the three races focused on, when they advanced to martial sage, they all cultivated heavenly sage laws. The vast spiritual energy contained in the spirit veins origin could be converted into the heavenly sage laws they cultivated. Shao Chen observed for a while. Among the martial practitioners of the three races fighting for the rank 3 spirit vein, there were no monstrous geniuses of the younger generation. Shao Chen smiled faintly. Now that he had obtained this rank 3 spirit veins origin, he should not need to spend too much effort on it. If one was not a demonic genius of the younger generation, the other inferior grade martial sages would find it hard to contend against him. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, something strange happened. A figure charged over and sent out berserk water tornadoes. The cultivators struck by the water tornadoes all vomited blood and fell to the ground. With a wave of his hand, no one was a match for him. Even the stronger deity race cultivators were no exception. Before they could execute their mental energy martial techniques, the berserk water tornadoes severely injured them and knocked them to the ground. The force contained in the water tornadoes seemed to be able to pierce through space. They gave off a loud, ear-splitting sound. Not bad. A rank 3 spirit veins origin is considered a rare item in the chaotic demonic sea. The person who arrived laughed loudly and stretched out his hand to grab the rank 3 spirit veins ball of light. All this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly. When Shao Chen saw the other party's deep blue eyes, his expression turned grave. Unexpectedly, the person who arrived was one of the 3 merfolk race cultivators. This person looked delicate and pretty. From a glance, he looked to be no older than 25 years old. He was wearing a close-fitting leather armor with patterns that Shao Chen could not understand. The lines of the patterns had a faint glow, so it should not be some ordinary clothing. This person's strong strength shocked the cultivators of the 3 races. When they landed on the ground and saw the other party holding the spirit veins origin, they did not dare to do anything. The young merfolk race cultivator carefully put away the spirit veins origin. Then he looked at the cultivators below, who did not dare to say anything. He smiled gently and prepared to leave. However, the moment the merfolk race cultivator turned around, he saw a white figure appear at some point, looking at him calmly. The merfolk race cultivator was startled. When did this person appear? Why did I not sense him at all? Hand over the spirit veins origin, and I will let you go, Shao Chen said indifferently, directly stating his purpose. The merfolk race cultivator's lips curled up. He smiled and said, I'll give it to you. I Mu Yun will not give it to you for free. Stop dreaming. The merfolk race cultivator's temper was rather explosive. Before Shao Chen could say anything, he sent out a water spout. The water spun wildly, looking like a pillar of light as it shot toward Shao Chen. Rumble. The sound of surging water rang out endlessly. The approaching water spout was incredibly berserk, looking like it could easily pierce through a mountain. The originally gentle water seemed so berserk in this person's hands, even more ferocious than fire or hail. Ka! A saber light flashed, and thunder roared in the sky. The berserk waterspout split in half and brushed past Shao Chen, not injuring him at all. The cold saber light flickered with sparks. Shao Chen held the lunar shadow saber with one hand and pointed it at the other party. Seeing his opponent break his waterspout with a casual saber strike, a strange look flashed in Mu Yun's eyes. However, he was not frightened. Not bad. You have some strength. However, you are too naive if you want to block my way with this little strength. Falling rain like sabers. Mu Yun shouted and formed hand seals with one hand. Then he pointed to the sky. Dark clouds churned, and after a while, heavy rain fell. The rainwater formed a line, each line like a saber. High in the sky, a bird attracted by the spiritual light accidentally flew through it. The bird cried out miserably, and thousands of tiny bloody holes appeared all over its body. It died instantly, unable to resist at all. Falling rain like sabers formed a line. The rainwater falling from the sky was even sharper than a saber. Mu Yun's lips curled up in a smile. This falling rain like sabers had killed many martial sages in the chaotic demonic sea. It covered a large area and lasted for a long time. Once one fell into it, they would not be able to escape the fate of being pierced through. A vast sea appeared behind Xiaochen. 99 pillars of water soared into the sky. A blue dragon leaped out of the sea, and a 3-kilometer-long dragon-shaped saber chi gathered on the saber. Before Mu Yun's smile could freeze, he saw Xiaochen chopping down with his saber. The dark clouds in the sky were split in half. Sunlight shone down, and the torrential rain vanished. With this move forcefully broken, Mu Yun's chi and blood surged, and his heavenly sage laws turned chaotic. He quickly suppressed them. An electric light flashed, and Xiaochen descended from the sky. He moved as fast as the wind, but his saber was even faster than the wind. Mu Yun's figure wavered, and the afterimage he left behind was chopped in half. He stretched out his hand, and a saber appeared in his grasp. Then he swung his saber horizontally and blocked Xiaochen's next attack. Sparks flew everywhere as Xiaochen quickly changed his move. The saber light split into 81 saber images. Each saber image contained his will of thunder. Ding, ding, ding. Mu Yun felt his arm sink slightly as he blocked the 81 saber strikes. With every block, he moved back significantly. By the time he blocked the final saber strike, he had already moved back 3 kilometers. Mu Yun could tell that this move was extraordinary. The heavenly sage laws in his body surged, and a vast sea appeared behind him. As the saber flew over his head, it surged forward like a tsunami. Boom! The sea of lightning and the vast tsunami collided with each other, causing violent ripples in the void. Waves of earth-shattering sounds rang out continuously. Blood leaked out of a corner of Mu Yun's lips as he retreated a kilometer. Before he could stabilize himself, he suddenly felt an extremely dangerous killing chi. However, when he looked carefully, he could not find any traces of it. Just as Mu Yun panicked, a pretty figure flashed by him. She moved her 10 fingers, and a gentle screen of water formed in front of her. The instant the screen of water formed, a beam of rainbow light flickered like a meteor and crashed into it. Ripples spread out from the gentle screen of water, slowly dissipating the energy contained in the beam of rainbow light. The ripples moved faster and faster. Finally, there was a loud bang. Unexpectedly, the screen of water could not withstand this energy, and it turned into a spray of water that scattered into the air. However, after blocking for a while, the might of that beam of rainbow light was completely blocked. Xiaochen did not get greedy. He sheathed his saber and retreated. His movements were very clean and decisive as he watched the newcomer quietly. The newcomer was a girl. She also wore aqua blue leather. Most of her skin was exposed, and she had a pair of pretty sky blue eyes. When Mu Yun saw the screen of water shatter, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Unexpectedly, even the princess's azure sky water curtain could not block the earlier saber strike. If the princess had not come, that earlier saber strike would have killed him without a doubt. However, this place was special. Even if he died, his death would only be transmitted out. He would not truly die. Mu Yun, hand over the spirit vein's origin to this young master. I believe this is a misunderstanding, the beautiful merfolk girl said softly. Her voice was like flowing water, very pleasant to the ears. Mu Yun frowned slightly. However, he did not dare to disobey this girl. He took out the spirit vein's origin and tossed it to Xiaochen. Xiaochen stretched out his hand to catch it. Then, he casually tossed it into the immortal spirit ring. After glancing at this girl, Xiaochen did not say anything. He stood on a lightning dragon and vanished into the sky. Seeing Xiaochen's indifferent attitude, Mu Yun could not help feeling even more upset. He said, "This fellow is too arrogant." He left without saying anything. It's like I snatched his spirit vein's origin. The merfolk girl withdrew her gaze and said softly, "This person is not simple." The Sage Mark Monument is famous in the chaotic demonic sea, even the entire oceanic world. However, this person was at the top of the Sage Mark Monument earlier. In the past 10,000 years, I have never heard of anyone doing this. Feeling dissatisfied, Mu Yun said, however, no matter what, he is just an inferior grade martial sage. I don't believe that Princess Yao Yen and I are not a match for him even if we work together. Chapter 8:34. It's just a rank 3 spiritual vein. There's no need to become enemies with this person. Don't forget our purpose for coming here. The crisis of the Merfolk tribe rests entirely on the three of us. Hearing the woman's words, Mu Yun's expression slowly turned grim. Princess Yao Yen glanced in the direction that Xiao Chen had left and said, "Let's go. Let's find your big brother first, then we'll go to the treasury hall. We must obtain the extreme thunder sword." Hee, what a dense spiritual energy. Now that the lunar cassia tree has matured, we can save 10 years of time. Xiao Chen, keep up the good work and find a few more spirit veins. Just a few supreme-grade spirit veins will do. Inside the immortal spirit ring, Ao Jiao said excitedly as she controlled the formation in the ring to insert the spirit vein. Hearing that it could only save 10 years, Xiao Chen was disappointed. He said, a rank 3 spirit vein can only save 10 years? The lunar cassia tree takes 500 years to mature. That's a little too many spirit veins. Ao Jiao's lips curled up as she said, you should be content with what you have. Only your immortal spirit ring is of a higher grade. If it were the immortal spirit ring of another Emperor Wu, the formations in it would not be complete. You would be thankful if you could save 5 years. However, if you can obtain a peak grade spirit vein, you can save 100 years. If it's a holy grade spirit vein, you can immediately ripen it. The dragon mark fruit you need the most will immediately reach 1,000 years of age. Peak spirit veins could produce superior grade spirit stones. Rank 9 sects had a limited number of superior grade spirit veins, not to mention holy spirit veins. The Supreme Sky sect seemed to have only 2. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Xiao Chen looked around and continued to search for the spiritual vein. Xiao Chen was clearly not as good at finding the departed flower as the corpse race and the ghost race. Everyone had their own specialties, and there was no way he could compare to the professionals. Hence, Xiao Chen followed a group of ghost race cultivators searching for departed spirit flowers on this savanna. The other party cultivated the power of death and would not care about the spiritual vein origin. Xiao Chen followed behind and took advantage of the situation. As for the battle between them and the corpse race, he naturally would not interfere. The battle between the two races was an eye-opener for Xiao Chen. One side summoned demonic corpses that were suffused with black smoke, while the other side summoned Yin soldiers that emitted gusts of cold wind. The battle was rather brilliant, and the scene was extremely grand. As Xiao Chen followed this group of ghost race cultivators, he gained a lot. The speed at which he found spirit veins excited him. In a short half a day, he had collected another 5 rank 3 spirit veins. When this group of ghost race cultivators met up with another group of people, Xiao Chen sighed when he saw the 8 ghost palanquin floating in the air. He knew that this relaxed and happy situation was about to come to an end. Young Master Xiao, please wait. The woman walked out from the palanquin and called out to Xiao Chen. The younger generation of the ghost race, led by Qing Cheng, had all arrived. Now, they were gathering the other ghost race cultivators. Naturally, Xiao Chen would not follow behind and take advantage of the situation. His earlier actions had already incurred the displeasure of the ghost race cultivators. However, they could not do anything to him, so they could only pretend not to see it. When Xiao Chen heard Qing Cheng's voice, he turned around slightly. However, he did not approach blindly. 5 demonic geniuses of the younger generation and more than 100 inferior-grade martial sages of the ghost race. With such a lineup, Xiao Chen would not let himself be in danger. Young Master Xiao is really cautious. Would you mind speaking further? I have something to discuss with you. Qing Cheng revealed a faint smile on her snow-white face as she looked at Xiao Chen, who was 2 kilometers away. Xiao Chen thought for a while and looked around. Suddenly, electric light burst out from under his feet, and he instantly closed the distance of 2 kilometers. Green flames burned in the eyes of the ghost race cultivators that Xiao Chen had taken advantage of. They were eager to make a move, and a sinister wind blew. When Xiao Chen saw this, he smiled to himself. It looks like this group of ghost race cultivators really have a problem with me. However, Xiao Chen did not do anything. He only watched them fight with the corpse race and picked up some spirit veins that they did not need. What is it? Speak. Actually, Xiao Chen had some guesses in his heart. If that was really the case, he might be able to take advantage of the situation. Qing Cheng was rather direct. She said, if you want to collect spirit veins, we can help you find them. However, you have to agree to help us deal with the corpse race. Help us deal with the corpse race. Otherwise, if you search for it yourself, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to be efficient. The corner of Xiao Chen's lips curled up. He said, sorry, these conditions are not enough for me to offend the corpse race. Qing Cheng had expected this long ago. She had not thought of using these conditions to move Xiao Chen. She continued, if we say that we can help you find a peak spirit vein's origin, will you still say sorry? Peak spirit veins could produce superior grade spirit stones in large quantities. In the Tianwu domain, the accumulations of a sect were measured by the number of peak spirit veins they had. Sects frequently needed superior grade spirit stones to reward their disciples. Without sufficient resources, they could not attract new disciples to join the sect. Peak spirit veins were very valuable and could not be easily measured. To Xiao Chen, if he could find a peak spirit vein, he might be able to accelerate the ripening of the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit. However, when Xiao Chen heard Qing Cheng's words, his first reaction was not to be tempted. Instead, he considered the pros and cons. Spirit veins were useless to corpse race cultivators. However, they were still valuable. They could use them to exchange for other treasures. They would not give them to Xiao Chen for free. If Xiao Chen guessed right, the old enemy of the ghost race, the corpse race, should know where the peak spirit vein was. They might be able to find help. Qing Cheng definitely knew that Xiao Chen had the death throne. Working with her would be like asking a tiger for its skin. It was normal for the other party to kill the donkey after it was no longer of use, using him as a hired thug. In the time it took for a spark to fly, Xiao Chen analyzed the situation in his mind several times. After a while, he said decisively, very well, I promise you. I hope that you will keep your promise after this matter is over. Joy flashed in the eyes of the 4 men and women behind Qing Cheng. A group of more than 100 people started moving quickly on the vast savanna. As they traveled, Qing Cheng told Xiao Chen about the details of the situation. The last time the Sage Mark Monument opened, it was also in this savanna. The ghost race and corpse race cultivators discovered 3 departed spirit flowers that bore fruit. The departed spirit fruits borne by departed spirit flowers contained death energy. Needless to say, everyone knew that they were much stronger than departed spirit flowers. Unfortunately, these departed spirit fruits were still 1 breath away from ripening. Furthermore, there was a black flame sovereign snake guarding them, so the 2 races had no choice but to give up. Now that 10 years had passed, those 3 departed spirit fruits were already ripe. Departed spirit flowers could bear departed spirit fruits. Furthermore, there were 3 of them. Without even thinking about it, the spirit vein hidden beneath them was definitely of a very high rank. Our strength is about the same as the corpse races. However, I heard that they are working together with the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant, Kuei-do. At that time, I will have to ask young Master Xiao to take care of Kuei-do, Qing Cheng said softly, sounding extremely weak. Kuei-do had advanced to martial sage through the physical body. Xiao Chen estimated that Kuei-do's sage body had already reached rank 3, even stronger than his peak rank 2 sage body. The cultivation of the physical body was extremely arduous. Those who could advance to martial sage through the physical body not only had unparalleled talent, but their extraordinary tenacity was also the most terrifying. The pain of tempering the physical body was something that Xiao Chen experienced much more deeply than others. As Ching Chung spoke, a small team sent out to search for ordinary departed spirit flowers sounded the alarm. They must have discovered something else. The departed spirit fruits were very far away. Naturally, these ghost race cultivators would not give up on the departed spirit flowers along the way. After sending out many small teams to search, Xiaochen found another 4 rank 3 spirit veins origins along the way. Electric light burst out, and Xiaochen left the speaking Qing Qing behind. Then he stood on a lightning dragon and arrived at the location of the incident after a few breaths. Qing Qing could not help but feel speechless. Can you not behave in such an unsightly manner? After all, you are someone who dared to oppose Di Wuk. Aren't you afraid of being mocked by others for being so anxious? Adding in this spirit veins origin, this fellow has already collected 10 rank 3 spirit veins by following us. If we convert them into astral coins, that would be a large sum. The one who spoke was Ji Shizhan, a genius of the ghost race who was as famous as Qing Cheng. He was very strong. However, Qing Cheng's status was much higher than Ji Shizhan's, so he was not as famous as Ji Shizhan. That's right. 10 spirit veins origins are already worth a peak sage grade secret treasure. To think that this fellow can take them with a clear conscience, not feeling any guilt at all. The other ghost race woman, Bai Su, curled her lips and said in an extremely upset manner. Qing Cheng's eyes remained as calm as still water. She said, there are not many people who can deal with Kueido. He is one of them. Let him be for now. We can talk about everything else after we obtain the departed spirit fruits. When Xiaochen rushed over, the ghost race cultivators had summoned Yin soldiers and were currently fighting with a group of corpse race cultivators. A cold wind howled. The Yin soldiers, which seemed both real and fake, looked extremely frightening. Yin soldiers were undying puppets that the ghost race refined from the souls of the dead using special methods. Like the demonic corpses of the corpse race, they were infamous in the Kunlun realm. When the ghost race and corpse race cultivators saw Xiaochen arrive, their expressions immediately turned unsightly. Xiaochen smiled faintly and arrived before the departed spirit flower in a flash. Then he plucked the departed spirit flower and punched the ground. Boom! Xiaochen's energy spread out, and the spirit veins origins hidden underground were affected. They struggled free with a bang. A tricolored spiritual light broke through the ground, filling the sky with auspicious signs. Xiaochen raised his head and looked around. Soon, his gaze fixed on a flickering spirit veins origin. He stretched out his hand, and a suction pulled it over. After tossing it into the universe ring, Xiaochen stood on a flickering electric light and vanished. The ghost race cultivators did not find this strange. They let go of the corpse race cultivators and continued searching for departed spirit flowers along the way. After returning to the group, Xiaochen handed the departed spirit flower to Qing Cheng. Then he smiled apologetically and said, where were we? Please continue. Ji Shizhan and the others could not be bothered to retort. Out of sight, out of mind. They directly soared into the air, leaving only Qing Cheng to negotiate with Xiaochen. We were talking about having you deal with Kueido. At the very least, you have to help us delay him, Qing Cheng said patiently. Xiaochen smiled and said, that's easy. Before Xiaochen could finish speaking, the alarm unique to the ghost race rang out in another direction. It was another group that had found another departed spirit flower and clashed with the corpse race. Chapter 8:35. Electric light flashed, and a gentle breeze blew, picking up the withered leaves. In the blink of an eye, Xiaochen vanished from Qing Cheng's sight. Qing Cheng showed some anger on her face, but she hid it well and continued leading the group forward. By the time the sun set the next day, Xiaochen had collected 35 rank 3 spirit veins, a horrifying number. Even the Haotian sect could take out only 200 or 300 rank 3 spirit veins, not to mention their 10,000 years of accumulation. The lunar cassia tree that Ao Jiao infused with her full power in the immortal spirit ring had already reached a height of more than 100 meters. Its branches and leaves were lush, and lush greenery filled the air. As for the dragon mark fruits that Xiaochen valued, they were growing even better. There were now 6 of them, and each of them had a golden bright fruit hanging on them. The effects of the 30-odd high-ranked spirit veins had not gone to waste. Ao Jiao giggled and said, "Do your best. Do your best. These ghost race cultivators are really good people. A team of more than 100 people helping you search for spirit veins for free. This is a rare opportunity." An irritable aura spread through the ghost race group. Qing Cheng wondered if she had found the wrong person. They watched as their group fought to the death with the corpse race. Yet, this fellow managed to obtain the spirit veins' origin so easily. Sometimes, when Xiao Chen was lucky, he could pick a departed spirit flower. However, if the corpse race managed to obtain the departed spirit flower first, he would not waste his energy to help them snatch it. Qing Cheng wanted Xiao Chen to help, but when she looked back, she discovered that he had already disappeared. She could not do anything about it. In the following 2 days, not only the ghost race but also the corpse race raised their guard against Xiao Chen. When the 2 sides saw him appear, they tacitly stopped fighting at the same time and started fighting for the departed spirit flowers and spirit veins' origins. Furthermore, most of the spirit veins in the savannah had already been searched. Xiao Chen's harvest decreased sharply. After 2 days, he managed to obtain 5 spirit veins' origins. However, 40 spirit veins' origins were sufficient. Within 4 days, the lunar cassia tree and the dragon mark fruit in the immortal spirit ring reached 400 years of age. Xiao Chen estimated that the moon cassia tree would be completely mature in 2 days. At that time, he could either keep it for himself or sell it for star coins. Of course, the prerequisite for all of this was that they would be able to obtain that supreme-grade spirit vein. Otherwise, they would have to wait another 100 years. Or he could spend a large amount of money to buy a rank 3 spirit vein from the black market. That would not be worth it. The advancing team suddenly stopped. Xiao Chen also frowned slightly. Just a moment ago, the death qi that filled the void suddenly increased by a lot. Life and death, the withering of flowers and grass, the extinction of birds and beasts, or the death of cultivators, the death qi of the world always existed. However, it was difficult for ordinary cultivators to sense it. If they accidentally sensed it, they would avoid it. No one liked death qi. Xiao Chen was no exception. However, the group of ghost race cultivators behind all looked radiant. Their eyes gleamed with vigor, clearly enjoying themselves. Xiao Chen focused on the vast savannah at the limits of his vision. He could see 2 strands of black smoke soaring into the sky, forming a black cloud in the clear sky. Unexpectedly, the formless death qi was visible to the naked eye. Needless to say, the departed spirit fruit was below the black cloud. In another direction, the many corpse race cultivators all stopped as well. As they looked at the black cloud, greed appeared in their eyes. 5 men stood at the front of the group. The one in the middle was the mysterious man with the departed spirit mark on his forehead that Xiao Chen had paid special attention to. Beside him was Wang Can, who had fought with Xiao Chen before. The other 3 were the outstanding talents of the corpse race's younger generation. Brother Wei Hua, that place is where the departed spirit fruit is. However, there are only 2 strands of death qi. The black flame sovereign snake guarding this place should have eaten one, Wang Can said politely as he pointed to the front. Wei Hua nodded and said in a somewhat hoarse voice, "I can feel it. I only need 1 departed spirit fruit. That will be sufficient for me to advance to late-stage inferior-grade martial sage." The ghost race people, a murderous intent flashed in Wei Hua's eyes. He said, "There's no need to worry. This time, I brought 3 underworld fire demonic corpses. Each of them can hold their own against a medial-grade martial sage. There is no need to fear even if we run into Di-Wuk." Bang! Intense explosions resounded in the air. Wang Can looked up and saw a figure moving quickly in the air. Xiao Chen could not feel any fluctuations of death energy or heavenly sage laws. When that person stomped on the air, there was an intense explosion that sounded like thunder. Relying entirely on the control of his physical body, he stepped on the void and arrived at an extraordinary speed. Wang Can's face lit up in joy. He smiled and said, "Kuei Do is here. Now we are even more confident." Wei Hua raised his eyebrows slightly and said, The physical body of the Iron Hand Sovereign's descendant is indeed as strong as before. However, Wei Hua's tone did not sound friendly. Wang Can knew the secret behind this. Wei Hua's great-grandfather was a true major character of the Corpse God Palace, one of the 4 sovereign martial emperors, the Underworld Fire Sovereign. Back then, when the Iron Hand Sovereign betrayed the Corpse God Palace, he fought with Wei Hua's great-grandfather. In the end, the Underworld Fire Sovereign lost, allowing the Iron Hand Sovereign to flee. The old grudges of adulthood had long since faded away with the passage of time. There was no eternal hatred between sovereign martial emperors. However, when 2 descendants met, a small grudge would definitely exist. Whoosh! The Iron Hand Sovereign's figure flashed, and he landed in front of Wei Hua. He smiled and said, "The 2 of you have been waiting for a long time. I ran into Yan Shisan along the way and spent some effort to shake him off." Wei Hua smiled gently and said, "Yan Shisan's killing sword Dao extinguishes all life force, killing everything in the world. You focus on cultivating the physical body. It is normal that you cannot defeat him." The Iron Hand Sovereign's expression changed as he stared at Wei Hua. Then he smiled and said, "I was wondering who it was. So, it is the Underworld Fire Sovereign's descendant. The scar on your great-grandfather's chest should still be there, right? The full power strike of a rank 7 sage body left a mark that will not fade even after 10,000 years." The 2 started mocking each other the moment they met. Wang Can quickly stepped forward and laughed loudly. "Brother Kuei-do, let's go quickly. After this matter is over, I guarantee that I will give you my heavenly demon body cultivation art." Kuei-do snorted coldly and did not say anything more. Wei Hua also knew when to advance and when to retreat. This was not the time to seek trouble for the other party, so he did not continue mocking the other party. The 2 groups headed for the place where the black smoke rose, flying quickly over the savannah. For hours later, the 2 groups arrived almost at the same time. However, they did not start fighting immediately. Instead, they showed grave expressions. When the 2 groups arrived below the black clouds, they did not see the departed spirit flower. There was only a black snake coiled around its body, looking like a small hill. A faint flame burned on its black scales. A pair of small horns protruded from its head, and it flicked its scarlet tongue as it looked around. This was the Black Flame Sovereign Snake. However, its size surpassed everyone's expectations. There was also the small horn on its head. All of these indicated that the Black Flame Sovereign Snake's strength had improved in the past 10 years. Qing Cheng stared at the Black Flame Sovereign Snake and said, "This is problematic. It swallowed a departed spirit fruit. It is probably as strong as a superior grade martial sage now." Wang Can and the others frowned heavily as well. They did not know what to do. Earlier, they had not treated the Black Flame Sovereign Snake as much trouble. As the 2 groups soared into the air, they could see the anxiety in each other's eyes. This was not the result that Xiao Chen wanted. Xiao Chen entered deep thought. After a while, he said, "The departed spirit fruit should be under it. I'll lure it away." Ji Shizhan, Bai Su, and the others looked at Xiao Chen in shock. It was not that they did not believe in Xiao Chen's strength. However, it was rare for Xiao Chen to take the initiative to help. "Don't worry. I'm still confident in my speed. After I return, I will help you delay Kuei-do." Xiao Chen continued, dispelling the doubts in Qing Cheng's heart. She nodded and said, "Dragging things out like this is not a solution. In that case, I'll have to trouble young Master Xiao. However, are you confident of escaping?" The interests of the 2 groups were now tied together. If they lost, it would be impossible for Xiao Chen to obtain the peak spirit vein. "I never do things that I am not confident of." Xiao Chen pushed off the air, and his figure flickered. Then, a bow appeared in his hand. Xiao Chen drew the bowstring, and an arrow fell like a meteor, tearing space apart. With a ka-ci sound, the arrow accurately struck the gap between the Black Flame Sovereign Snake's scales and entered its body. Just one arrow was already so powerful. Qing Cheng, Wang Can, and the others were all astonished. Since when did the Black Flame Sovereign Snake's defense become like tofu? There is a secret to this bow. The few of them stared at the Soul Slayer bow in Xiao Chen's hand. Their eyes revealed an extremely interested expression. This was especially so for Kuei-do. He watched very carefully. When Xiao Chen drew the bowstring, he used pure vital qi. Blood flowed out, and the black flame sovereign snake howled in pain. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a stream of flames at Xiao Chen. The dense black flames were like dense clouds. Everywhere it passed, it burned up the air and dust, leaving behind large patches of pitch-black space. Xiao Chen nimbly dodged. Then he drew the bowstring again and fired another arrow. The black flame sovereign snake was thoroughly enraged. Its huge body soared into the air and shot toward Xiao Chen. When the black flame sovereign snake's body left the ground, 3 departed spirit flowers appeared before the 2 teams. 2 of the flowers contained a black fruit. Attack! The 2 teams withdrew their attention from the Soul Slayer bow in Xiao Chen's hand. They did not waste any words and immediately started fighting. Along the way, the teams that the 2 sides sent out to search for departed spirit flowers had fought several times. Both sides had been preparing for this fierce battle for a long time. Far away, Xiao Chen, who was dodging the black flame sovereign snake's attacks, revealed a faint smile. This was the situation that he wanted to see. The black flames surged endlessly. Occasionally, large patches of pitch-black space appeared in the sky. Xiao Chen frowned, not daring to dodge. The might of these flames was ferocious. Furthermore, they contained a deathly energy that could burn away life force. Suddenly, there was the sound of a swift wind. The wind was like a saber, piercing through the surface of Xiao Chen's protective quintessence and causing his face to hurt. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.